We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lenape peoples who have a long-standing relationship to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moraviantown. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island. Now, before I surrender the chair and hand things over, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to leave you with a few parting thoughts. Now, for those of you who were at our orientation meeting last month, I spoke about people feeling overwhelmed with change, as if they were being buried alive. Make no mistake, the past few years have been traumatic and filled with a lot of disruption and discord. And at times we may have felt that our destiny was in the hands of the gang from the Glass Onion. But I do not want to leave on a negative note. I believe that the pendulum is not broken. It may be kind of stuck off to the side right now, but not broken. So let me put things into perspective and offer my thoughts on the future. Conservation authorities were formed as municipalities learned to work together to tackle issues such as flooding, drought, water quality impairment, and the management of natural areas and hazard lands. The natural environment does not recognize arbitrary municipal lines on a map. And in a watershed, we are all in it together. I believe that the role of conservation authorities is just as critical now as it ever has been in the past. Climate change, and we can argue about the whys and the wherefores, but make no mistake, our climate is changing. And combined with extreme weather events and the development of urban spaces, and modern infrastructure, all present challenges to protecting our water supply, our natural spaces, and keeping persons and property safe from flooding. As a new board, you will have a steep learning curve and numerous issues to contend with. Changes to the Conservation Authorities Act over the past few years and fiscal pressures will make it difficult to look beyond the day-to-day and to chart a new course and a new vision for our watershed. Fortunately, you have a dedicated and creative staff who will assist you as you move forward. Staff know the challenges that we face and have ideas on how to protect and enhance our natural environment. For example, a few years ago, UTRCA developed a plan known as the environmental targets. And I think even the new board members have been shown a copy of this and are aware of it. This plan set 4 specific targets and the necessary steps needed to achieve each target. The result will be a concatenation of achievements that are broad-based and mutually supporting throughout the organization. First target is to improve water quality in each subwatershed by 1 grade as measured at the UTRCA watershed report card. Second target is to establish and restore 1,500 hectares of natural vegetation cover, windbreaks, and buffers by 2037. Third target is to reduce flood and erosion risk by updating flood models and hazard mapping for all UTRCA subwatersheds by 2020, and then to integrate climate change scenarios into the updated models and develop climate change adaptation strategies by 2030. And the fourth target is to reach 1 million people annually with conservation message through access to UTRCA lands, and demonstration of green infrastructure by the year 2030. Now, over the past few years, the board began to provide the necessary funding to implement these upgrades. But we did not finish the job. I urge the staff and new board to forge ahead and reach these targets. These targets are broad-based, they are measurable, and they are achievable. The cost to complete implementation is great. The cost of inaction is even greater. I would like to thank the board for their confidence in allowing me to serve as chair over the past 2 years. The 2 years that I'll cherish the rest of my days. I would like to thank them for their patience and support. I would like to thank those who served on committees. In particular, I would like to recognize the contributions of Sandy Levin, Brian Petrie. Thank you to you both. Couldn't have done it without you. I would like to thank the staff, right from the very top, from Ian Wilcox, and then Tracy Annett, all the way down through the managers and throughout the entire organization. Your dedication, professionalism, and your enthusiasm is greatly appreciated. And we witnessed this yet again, just last Monday, with another very successful Celebrating Natural Connections event right here at Fanshawe. A great day and great effort with staff. Thank you also to our solicitor, Mr. Grant Inglis. Your words of wisdom and your reassuring presence is always helpful. Together, we have weathered fiscal pressures, repeated changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, and the added bonus of contending with a worldwide pandemic. It's not quite what we expected when we first sat in this room 4 years ago. Lastly, I would like to thank our member municipalities and partner agencies for our strong and constructive relationships that have endured throughout this time. And so, I leave you to it. And I challenge you to be bold, be creative, be guardians of our river system, natural environment, inspire a healthy watershed, and leave a legacy for future generations to enjoy. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that part. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the 2023 board elections. So this concludes responsibilities for the 2022 board of directors. Sorry, the 2018 to 2022 board of directors. And we'll now undertake the formal transition to the 2023 board. As part of this transition, I will now vacate the position of chair and declare all officers' positions vacant. That includes not only the role of chair, but also vice chair, membership on both the hearing committee, finance and audit committee, and the roles of authority liaison and striking committee representation on the source water protection committee. And I'll now ask for a motion to elect Grant Inglis as our interim chair for purpose of conducting the election. Moved by Sandy, seconder, Skylar. Any comments or questions? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? There's none opposed. The motion is carried. And so with that, I will turn the floor over to Grant to conduct the election. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is my chair for a minute day. I'm just trying to figure out who I'm going to get, but however, I'm going to outline for you the procedure, the procedures for elections is specified in the Authorities Act, Conservation Authorities Act, and our administrative bylaw. So I am going to ask both the chair and the vice chair There'll be similar procedures. The acting chair, I'm going to ask for nominations for the position of chair. Number two, I'm going to call for nominations for the position of chair 3 times. I will require a mover for that. Then I will request a motion to close nominations. And for that, I'll need a mover and a seconder. I will then ask the nominee or nominees whether they're willing to accept the nominations. And if there is only one nominee, that individual shall be declared into the position by acclamation. In the event that more than one member is nominated for the position of authority chair or vice chair, I will request a motion to nominate 2 scrutineers. I would like to suggest Michelle Vigilante and Eleanor Hagee. And I will then allow each nominee not more than 3 minutes to speak for their office in the order of alphabetical listing by surname. Upon acceptance by the nominees to stand for election, ballots will be distributed to you as the members by the scrutineers for the purpose of election. And I shall ask the members to write the name of one individual only on the ballot. If there are more than 2 nominees, and upon the first vote, no nominee receives the majority required for election, the name of the person with the least number of votes shall be removed from further consideration for the office, and new ballots shall be distributed. In the event of a second vote, where no nominee receives the majority required for election, and where 2 or more nominees are tied with the least number of votes, a special vote shall be taken to decide which of such tied nominees' names shall be dropped from the list of names to be voted on in the next vote. Should there be a tie vote between the 2 remaining candidates, new ballots shall be distributed and a second vote held. Should there still be a tie after the second ballot, a third vote will be held. Should there be a tie after the third vote, the election of the office shall be decided by lot drawn by me to designate. So that's where I get my power right there. We've never gotten there. So I'm going, and vice chair is exactly the same. And then I will turn it over to your elected chair, and he or she will proceed then to go through the nomination for members of our hearing committee. And you'll all be involved in that again. So shall I start? Are there any questions? If there aren't, I'm going to ask for, is this the chair? Nominations for position of the chair of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. Sandy.
I nominate Brian Petrie.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair for the authority for the next term? It's once. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority? It's the second one. And the third one, I ask, are there any other nominations for the position of chair of the authority for the following year? Seeing none, I'm going to ask Mr. Petrie whether he will accept the nomination.
I will, yes. Thank you.
And therefore, since you were the only nominee, I declare you the chair of the authority for the next year. So now I'll go on to the vice chair. And I'll open it up. Are there nominations for the position of vice chair? Skylar.
I'd like to nominate Sandy Levin.
Thank you. Sir.
That was my nomination as well.
Are there Any other nominations for the position of vice chair of the authority for the next term? Count on my fingers. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair of the authority for the next term? And the third time, you started to put your hand up. And
No, I was.
What the option is. You've just bought it. The third call for nominations for the position of vice chair of the authority for the following term. This is easy. Seeing none. Do you wish to stand? Allow your nomination to stand, sir.
I do.
And since you are the one nominee, I declare you the vice chair of the authority. Now, sir, I'm turning it over to you.
Actually, if I read the rules right, you're supposed to continue. So
Am I supposed to do it?
I like to delegate.
Okay.
His first decision is chair.
The next election will be for members of the hearing committee. And the hearing committee consists of the chair, vice chair, past authority chair, and 2 additional members. Since there is no past chair being pastured, 3 members will be elected to the hearing committee. And I will open the nominations for the position of members of the hearing committee. Sir,
I nominate Dean.
I'm sorry.
Dean Kukowski.
Oh, okay. Are there any other nominations for the membership on the hearing committee?
I nominate Paul, please. Paul Mitchell.
Anna?
I nominate Skylar Frank.
I'm sorry.
Skylar Frank.
Are there any other nominations for membership on the hearing committee? I'll ask again, the second time, are there any other nominations for membership on the hearing committee of the authority? And a third time, are there any other nominations? Again, are the 3 of you willing to stand?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I
Thank
am.
you. I declare, since there are no other nominations, that you're all members of the hearing committee. And congratulations. Congratulations. Really making me work here. The next one is the Finance and Audit Committee. And the Finance and Audit Committee of the authority consists of the chair and 2 to 4 additional members as stipulated in your administrative bylaw.
Seat to
I
the
am
right.
noting that the vice chair is not appointed to the committee. They must be elected if they wish to serve.
Seat to the right.
So I'm going to ask for nominations for membership on the Finance and Audit Committee for the next term.
I'll nominate Sandy.
Are there any others for membership?
I'll nominate Paul. We didn't arrange that.
I'm not going to say anything.
You'd express interest.
It's too open. I'll call for another time. Are there further nominations for membership on the Finance and Audit Committee for the next term?
It would be helpful to have.
I have 3 at the moment.
I'll nominate Tom Heeman.
Okay. I now have 4. Are there any other nominations for membership on the Finance and Audit Committee for the next term? One, are there any other nominations for membership on the Finance and Audit Committee for the next term? Two. And lastly, are there any other nominations for the membership on the Finance and Audit Committee for the next term? Once again, we don't need a vote. We have our members for the Finance and Audit Committee. Congratulations. Now, the last one.
Sorry, Mr. Acting Chair, are the members willing to?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you willing to allow your nominations to stand for membership on the Finance and Audit Committee?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Can I go on to the source water protection now? Are you ready for that one? I am asking for nomination for the position of Source Water Protection Committee Liaison and Striking Committee. I just need a mover for that. And it's the same procedure as we have before. So the nominations are open. I think we only need one.
That is what the bylaw states, I believe.
It's Tracy. I just thought we might explain.
Anybody want to, be interested?
What the role is? Explaining what the role is?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you back.
You want me to provide an explanation of the role?
Okay.
Okay, so our source protection committee consists of members of the community, elected councillors, and representatives from different stakeholder groups. So agriculture, commercial sector, industrial sector, and they're throughout the watersheds of both the Upper Thames, the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, and the Lower Thames Conservation Authority. So our source protection committee is currently 15 members. And then typically our liaison member would attend all of our source protection committee meetings. We have 2 to 3 per year. And they make decisions about the protection of municipal drinking water sources throughout those 3 watersheds, our source protection region. That member would also be on our striking committee, which supports our staff in appointing new members to the source protection committee. So our current membership have 4-year terms on our source protection committee. So every 4 years, members turn over, and our striking committee supports the appointment of new members to that committee. And we have representatives from each of the 3 conservation authority boards that sit on our striking committee.
And how many meetings a year are there? I'm sorry.
Of this, so the striking committee really only meets about twice a year, but every other year. So we have half our membership of our source protection committee turns over every other year. They're 4-year terms. So every 2 years, half the committee's terms expire, and then another 2 years, the other half of the terms expire. So every 2 years, our source protection striking committee has to convene and appoint new members to the committee. And there's usually two meetings that go along with that process.
Can it be a member of the community, or does it have to be one of our board members?
It needs to be a board member.
Thank you. So I'll ask for can I have a nomination for one person to sit on the Source Water Protection Committee Liaison and Striking Committee?
We'll nominate Sandy Levin.
Okay. Are there any other I don't want to read this. Are there any other nominations for the Source Water Protection Committee Liaison and Striking Committee? Once. Are there any other nominations for that? 2. Are there any other nominations? That's three. Mr. Levin, do you wish to speak to your nomination?
I'm happy to take the role on.
Thank you. Then I declare that you are the member for that committee. And that then fulfills my role.
Hey. Well, job well done. Okay, we will. We're now going to proceed to number 4, modifications to the agenda, and I believe there is a request to modify the agenda. General Manager to speak to that, please.
We've recognized through the chair that we have a very busy day today. So we're going to actually request to defer agenda item 17, which is the tour of the Watershed Conservation Center, the presentation component. And we will have a chance to put that on our agenda after our March.
Excellent, thank you very much. Can I have a mover that the Board of Directors defer item 17, Watershed Conservation Center presentation to the March meeting? And a seconder, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next, I'll ask if anybody has any declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to administrative business. Approval of minutes for the previous meeting, March 22nd, 2022. Moved by Sandy. Can I have a seconder, please? Mark. Discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I don't think there's any business arising from the minutes. So we'll move to the next agenda item, which is correspondence. We have 3 items of correspondence, one being, well, actually, I'll turn that over to the general manager if they want to make any comment on that correspondence, please.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Just wanted to highlight that some of these documents and directions were expected. We spoke about that in our November meeting. We certainly expected that the freeze to any changes to our fee schedule would be implemented by the end of the year, January 1st. But just wanted to also recognize that the other notes from the Ministry of Natural Resources, Forestry about the implementation of the regulation. Certainly, we have rolled up with our member municipalities on how that affects any service changes that we're able to provide with relating to commenting on Planning Act applications from natural heritage features. But also really emphasize that our role related to natural hazards and commenting on those hazard features, floodplains, slope hazards and wetlands remains unchanged. And that's been a big part of that, is communicating that our role related to hazard has not changed. So just wanted to highlight that. It was unfortunate there was a bit of a transition period, but we're trying to work with our member municipalities to make sure that they have the information to make decisions on that regard.
Thank you very much. Can I have a mover who would have any discussion on that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority Board of Directors received for information all 3 pieces of correspondence? Tyler, Peter, second. Discussion. Mr. Levin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question to staff is, were there any budget related surprises in any of those communications?
Yes, through the chair, to Vice Chair Levin. Certainly there wasn't any budget related surprises. We did receive recently our transfer payment for Section 39 funding. That had not changed. And really there may be some potential budget implications for how fees are collected with related to natural heritage reviews that we're no longer able to provide. Hard to pin down that number when we're seeing increases in circulations of growth related applications and permits. So perhaps Jenna wants to elaborate on that, but it is a really tricky number to pin down when there's so many variables going on right now with the growth that we are experiencing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anna, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations. And through you, maybe this is a question to staff regarding the new regulatory requirements. Some changes there to municipalities, and I know the CAs are no longer going to be able to provide comments on a number of regulations. Will these pressures be put on municipalities now, and in particular, the Endangered Species Act? I just want to hear from staff their thoughts and where the responsibilities now lay.
Through the chair, I'm going to pass that over to Jenna to answer that question.
So through you, Chair, to Councillor Hopkins. Our role has always been as a commenting agency outside of hazard. So we have been providing that information as advice or recommendations to our municipalities, but they're ultimately the decision makers. So where we're being removed as a commenting agency, that responsibility is still going to lie with the municipalities. They just need to figure out how they're going to figure out how they get that information, and whether that's through hiring new staff or hiring consultants or third parties to undertake reviews on their behalf and provide those comments that we've been providing. That's certainly something that gets downloaded onto the municipality now. It's always been their responsibility, but we've been providing it as a service as part of our other hazard related. Yeah, I think most of them are really, most of our member municipalities, I would say, are still scrambling to try and figure out how they're going to fill that void where we've provided comments. So
Thank you.
lots of uncertainty.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know just wearing the two hats here, it's going to be something that we're going to have to determine ourselves with municipalities, how to deal with who's going to be making the comments, so, or doing the work. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the question. I do want to acknowledge, Scotty, we do know you're here on Zoom, so if you please make yourself known. I will try to make sure I look for your hand, but welcome. And we'll hope to see you in person very shortly. I'll just add to that. I think that it's very disappointing, again, the timelines of a release. Obviously, the government has all the power to make policy, and we do have to follow the policy. But again, around consultation and implementation is the issue there. Having something come out from December and then December 28th and then instantly be active on January 1st, it makes it very hard for not only the Conservation Authority, but also municipalities to be able to implement something and get that running to make sure that they're compliant. I know I was at Roma, and I did had a conversation about this with the minister, Minister Grayson, and just brought up those facts as well of just we need time to be able to implement these things if the government so chooses to proceed with them. So hopefully that message got through, and hopefully in the future any changes will be taken into consideration on how municipalities and conservation authorities can be consulted to make sure that we can do what the government wishes us to do. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Heyman.
Just a comment. I think that consultation and information are two different things, and we rely on conservation authorities to provide the natural heritage assessments. So I think there's still a valued role for conservation authorities to provide expertise, although it may be through an alternative pathway.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any further? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now move down to reports section 8.1, review and approval of the factual certificate. Tracy, would you like to expand on that for us?
I can just confirm that the bills have been paid. This at every meeting, but it's an annual occurrence now.
Excellent. And I will ask for a mover and a seconder that the board of directors approve the factual certificate as presented. Paul, George, seconder, any discussion on that? Being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. I apologize to the ones further down. This is the direction. It's hard to see who's putting their hand up. I will make sure I recognize you at a later time. And our meetings are usually not like set up like that, so it'd be easier to see everyone. But we need to come in as many people as possible. Excellent. And to be honest, I just lost my way. We did prove that. Perfect. Excellent. Thank you. Moving down to 8.2, the 2023 draft budget, and I'll ask Tracy to present that.
Sure, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things as we move into this through the chair. Certainly, we are a little bit different from municipalities in that we can have a deficit budget. And I just want to recognize that last year in February, when we approved a deficit budget as well, it was in the neighborhood of $834,000. But when we did our mid-year update to the budget, that decreased that amount down to $7,000, and that's the number that you see in the operating budget report for you. I would say that in previous years, especially through COVID and with these transitions, we tend to be cautious budgeters. There's been a lot of uncertainty. What we end up doing as part of our normal budget processes is looking for other funding throughout the year. We call that soft revenue, and we've got a great team that looks for additional funds and write great reports in order to get additional funds our way, either from federal departments, from different provincial agencies and non-profits and such. So we're always looking for a partner. And the other part that I'd like to highlight as well, I'd recognize depreciation as an expense, as a line item. It's not a cash expense, but it's certainly an expense that we show on our budget worksheet there too. We have had a few changes since we presented this report back in November, and even our new members, we've provided our November board report so that they can look through what had been approved before coming on the board. And those changes were outlined in the report that we presented today. Certainly, we've been refining some of the deliverables and initiatives that we are working towards to align with regulation. We've also switched over to our new budget tool, UTRCA, and that's going to be an excellent tool for us to better forecast and predict our budgets and look at different scenarios where our past software did not allow us that same functionality. That's something that we'll be working through again as we're transitioning to categorizing the types of programs we have, whether they be those mandatory category 1 programs, category 2 programs with our municipalities at their request, or those category 3 programs as a watershed-based agency that we're providing. Certainly, I'll pass it over to Christine if she wants to speak any more about the budget as a whole and our organizational objectives, but certainly between ourselves and the managers that are sitting in the back row here, we can take questions about the budget. Are there any questions?
Yeah, just before we go to questions, I will note that this is the time, this is the only time of the year that we do vote in a weighted way for non-matching levy sections. So, and that's part of our administrative bylaw and in accordance with the Ontario regulations that dictate to us how we do our business. So I will ask, is there any questions of staff on the report? Peter?
Thank you, through you, Chair. To the staff. So the idea is you carry the deficit forward, but you look for grants or something to square it up at the end of the year, or just traditionally you carry that deficit ahead every fiscal year.
I'll take that one. So we have reserves, we have funds that deficits get cleared through.
Right.
So that if we do experience a deficit in any one year, it's absorbed by previous year's surpluses. And then the next year.
It's never an accumulation, you're always drawing it down.
Well, we add to it when we can.
Right.
In the end, in 2022, we've added to our reserves. We forecast a deficit budget, but in the end, the actual result was a surplus. So we've been able to add to it in 2022. This year, we'll probably.
Thank you.
Need it.
Dean, you had your hand up.
I did, Chair, but I had a similar question and the question's been answered. Thank you.
Excellent. I will go to Paul, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my question to staff is to do with item number 3 on the page headline discussion. And it says that there's a number of items listed there for a total of $472,000, which makes up almost all of the deficit part of the budget. So my question is, while the work that's listed there is being required by provincial legislation and the timeframe that's put in, Is it fair to say that the information gathered and the strategies that will be developed will provide important guidance to the board and to staff moving forward? And in actuality, though it's on the books as an expense, it's really an investment in the work of the applicants.
Tracy, would you like to?
Through the chair, certainly it is an investment, like much of the work that we do. It's investing back into those program deliverables, having that guidance, but on the books as an asset, it's not necessarily seen in that same way. But, certainly, it is something that we will use for many years to come to guide the operations of people through those strategies.
If there's any further questions? Yeah, we'll go Sandy first.
Okay, just to build on Paul's question. So the elements that are in there, in particular, the strategy for conservation area lands and management plans and acquisition and disposition policies. That's referred to as category 1, if I understand it correctly. And is it in this year's budget being funded fully by the as allowed and required, as I understand it, by legislation? Through the chair to staff.
Yes, that's correct. Those category 1 programs are eligible for levy.
An additional burden on the municipalities for us doing something that the province is asking for. I'm done.
Thank you, Chair. And this might have been answered during your budget discussions, being new on the board. There's one number that really popped out on the operating budget to me, and that was in the expense section, line item. It's talking about personal expenses and the 21%. So I assume the majority of that is because of the new full-time employees for the strategic initiatives. So I was just wondering, how many new staff are we employing?
Just to clarify, would you like a clarification of that number, or would you like to know how many?
Just a top end, just an over. I don't need legal. I assume that's what it is. Am I reading that correctly? That it's.
Want me to answer, Tracy? Yeah, so that category personnel expenses does appear large for more than 2 reasons. We had a significant compensation increase last year, which affected last year only half of the year. It's fully implemented now in 2023. We do have additional headcount to backfill some of the work for these initiatives that we have included in 2023. And that category as a group includes all personnel expenses, not just wages. So per diems for board, travel expenses, PP&E, training. I have to list. All personnel expenses are combined in that figure.
Okay, thank you.
Multiple.
Through the chair, I'm kind of building off of Sandy. So just to understand, there were legislative changes too that would restrict you working with municipalities, which I assume you would charge a fee for. So is there a reduction in those revenues as well that you would be able to collect and then cover off some of the expenses?
Yeah, through the chair, Skylar, that's certainly one thing. Typically that would even out the wash, right? Because what we would be providing services to the municipalities, we would be collecting those costs to be able to do that.
Further questions? Sandy, please.
Just to help Jim and other new members of the board. If you go back actually 2 boards, there was a recommendation that we look at our compensation policy as we were falling behind other conservation authorities and municipalities in terms of retention and attraction of staff. And the previous board took a pretty bold step to approve a consultant to come in and do a compensation review and indicate to us what it would take to get more in line in order to retain and particularly attract staff. And we were very clearly informed by staff that there would be an implication on the budgets. So we took that step, and if I recollect unanimously. And I think we'll see the benefits as it goes forward. But you're right, it's a big number, but the big number is not a surprise to us. And we believe it was the right thing to do at the time.
And I can add that to a little bit. Traditionally, the board used April to April CPI as the wage indicator. Unfortunately, when we went to market, we realized that that wasn't keeping up with the current situation within the municipal world. I think we all know realize how short staff levels are out there, and qualified people to do the job, especially planners and stuff like that. So it was recognized, and so we've changed our direction on that to make sure that we are competitive. And this was just all the.
Yeah, through you, Chair Petrie, I think 3.5 is pretty reasonable, and both the private sector, public sector, and nonprofits, it seems to be consistent, so.
Yeah, we can certainly have that discussion when we get to the motion, but absolutely. Is there any further questions for staff on the report? Seeing none, I will question the board whether they would like the recommendations moved together, or if anybody would like them separated. Seeing none, I will assume that everybody would like to have that together. And I will ask for someone to make the motion as is presented within the report. Cuddy? Ms. Hopkins? Seconder? I want to ask if there's discussion.
Yeah, through the chair, I guess through the Tip Tracy or whoever would have been the one that made the presentation. I understand by reading this under discussion that there was municipal presentations were made to town of St. Mary's, the municipality of West Perth. Were those the only municipalities that received a formal presentation from the UTRCA?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. When we circulate the draft budget, we indicate that if municipalities would like a presentation, council is certainly to reach out to Michelle or I to schedule, and those were the two municipalities that requested, and both I presented at, and really there wasn't any detailed budget questions at those presentations, more general questions about our programs and services and some of the changes to the Conservation Authority.
Perfect. And so everybody's clear. The items that are for discussion are currently within the current budget package, correct? Okay. So to explain my process as chair a little bit further, if anybody would like to make an amendment to any motion, I will request that it is in writing. Help staff clarify and make sure that your view is totally known and that's not being interpreted. So those are the items for discussion. They are in the budget right now, so they are under the current motion. Is there any further discussion on the budget? Seeing none, I will ask Michelle then to do the weighted budget process then.
County of Oxford, George Way.
Approve.
County of Oxford, Scott Zaire.
Move.
Yeah,
County of Oxford, Paul Mitchell.
Approved.
County of Oxford, Brian Petrie.
Yes.
County of Oxford, Mark Schadenberg.
Approved.
City of London, Skylar Frank.
Yes.
City of London, Anna Hopkins.
Yes.
City of London, Peter Cuddy.
Yes.
City of London, Sandy Levin.
Yes.
Township of Lucan Vidalf, Tom Heeman.
Yes.
And Municipality of Thames Center, Tom Heeman.
Yes.
Municipality of Middlesex Center, Debbie Heffernan.
Yes.
City of Stratford, Harj Najjar.
Yes.
Township of Perth East, Hugh McDermott.
Yes.
Municipality of West Perth, Dean Trentowski.
Yes.
Town of St. Mary's, Jim Craigmile.
Yes.
Township of Perth South, Jim Craigmile,
Yes.
and Municipality of South Huron, Jim Craigmile.
Yes.
I believe that is a pass. Thank you, everybody. I know you've made staff very happy. Obviously, being a new board, it's always hard to come in and just have to pass the budget right away. I want to thank for your support and trusting staff and the former board for putting together a budget. And certainly the board will have this board will have a much larger role in next year's budget. So we look forward to those discussions. But that is a big step out of the way and allows staff to move forward with reaching our goals. I will now ask Tracy to present 8.3, please. Embro Dam Environmental Assessment Study Report.
Yes, thank you for the chair. I'd like to introduce Dr. Singh, who's been with us, authority for a few years now. He's been the main project lead along with David Charles on this project. And I'll turn it over to introduce the consulting team that's here to do the presentation.
Thanks, President. Thank you. This is my first time on a mic. So through the chair, thank you board for giving us the opportunity to present about the study. I would like to introduce Scott Robertson and Marriott Pushkar from Lyric Solutions. They will be providing a presentation on the study update, and we will follow it by introducing the board memo for the recommendation. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for having us. I'm happy to be the inaugural external presentation for the board. Presenting today, again, as Sarjeet said, on the Embro Dam Class Environmental Assessment. Just to get you into some geographical context here, we're within the township of Zorro in the Mud Creek watershed. And the Embro, I've lost, I have? No, I do not have. We are within the Embro Conservation Area, which is a 12-hectare parcel owned by the UTRCA. Within that area is the Embro Dam and Embro Pond, located coincidentally enough 2 kilometers north of Embro. The pond itself is around 0.8 hectares. The drainage area to the pond is about 7 square kilometers. It is a tributary to what's called North Branch Creek. In this particular water course that the dam is online, which means the dam is on the creek, goes by a couple of names, Spring Creek and Youngsville Drain, more commonly Youngsville Drain. So that's how I'll refer to it today. A bit about the project history and the problem statement. The project started in around, really the history of the dam. The property itself was acquired in 1958 by the UTRCA with a dam built in 1959. That's the current age of the current dam. A dam and or mill has been on the site since roughly the mid 1800s in various forms. It's come and gone. Some aerial imagery from the 50s showed no dam there. So again, 59, it was reconstructed. It was reconstructed for recreational purposes. There's no other function to it beyond like from a mill powering or electricity generation or anything like that. In 2007, 2008, there were a couple of engineering studies undertaken by consultants on behalf of UTRCA. One was Acres International. They did a dam safety assessment, which is where they're looking at the dam's physical characteristics and other aspects in relation to federal or provincial dam design guidelines and dam safety guidelines. The result of that study indicated that the dam was insufficient as to current standards. It has insufficient spillway capacity to pass the infill design flood, which could come down from the 7 square kilometer watershed. It provides insufficient freeboard above the maximum flood level, which means there's that danger of overtopping. And if it overtops and cannot be contained within an engineered spillway, it spills down the face of an earthen dam, which is not good for a dam. It can erode and the dam could fail. The upstream and downstream embankment slopes on the dam don't meet current design standards, and it doesn't meet current stability acceptance criteria either, meaning the dam under enough head could fail. Naylor Engineering Associates were brought in a year later and basically confirmed the exact same thing. They did more of a physical core drilling on an embankment stability assessment, and they determined again that it doesn't meet current standards. So, sorry, I'll back up there. There he is. So the class environmental assessment was initiated in 2015 with a draft EA project file report completed in 2017. Comments from the public at that time highlighted that perhaps the cultural heritage aspects of the dam hadn't been reviewed in enough depth. So the UTRCA went back and hired cultural heritage experts to come in and look at that. And of course, we had a pandemic in the middle. But the EA process recommenced in the fall of 2022, which has brought us to where we are today, with most recently the hopefully last and final public information center, which occurred at the end of January. So the class environmental assessment follows, which I'm sure I think most of you are associated with municipalities. It's very similar. We followed the Conservation Ontario class environmental assessment process, but it mirrors really the municipal class environmental assessment process in its various steps, which are to identify a problem or opportunity, to complete the background studies, to identify a number of alternatives that could possibly resolve the problem statement, to go through an assessment process, a public consultation process, to determine a preferred solution, assess the implications of that, and that's basically your phase 1 and 2 process. If approved, it then goes on to design and construction. One subtle difference between the Conservation Ontario Class EA and the Municipal Class EA is that there is a requirement, if it's determined to be necessary, to hold a community liaison committee, which is members of the public that then weigh in on the design and various concepts. And UTRCA staff have, through the Public Information Center, had a number of people express interest in that community liaison committee. So some context, because it's going to help you in your evaluation of whether or not you support our evaluation. The dam has about 100-meter long crest. It doesn't meet current safety or stability standards, as we said. Maximum height is about 4.5 meters. The pond itself, I said 0.8, and it drains an area of about 7 square kilometers. As of 2015, it was roughly 1/3 full of sediment. As with all online ponds, they collect sediment over time, and they will eventually need to be dredged out. We have anecdotal evidence from the public that it was cleaned out in the 80s, I think it was. So if we're already back as of 2015 to 1/3 full, we're now at 2022, I would think you're probably over 40% full at this point. It is an ongoing recurring expense that would have to take place if you were going to continue to have a dam at this location. The watercourse itself is what's called high resiliency to drought and low flow. And this is a function of it being basically a high quality watercourse. A lot of water goes back into the ground in the upper catchment area and recharges up as a nice cold water stream, which brings us to things like natural heritage. This is a very well-established and thriving brook trout stream, which is kind of an indicator species for level of water quality. It tends to indicate good, clean, clear groundwater. So the fact that brook trout are there, and they have been found both upstream and downstream of the dam, and this portion of Youngsville Drain is itself a source for brook trout stocking in other watercourses within the UTRC's watershed. It has historically been anyway. Putting a dam online affects the geomorphology of a watercourse. So the geomorphology is how that water, how that channel shapes the land. Geomorph is earth shaping. Fluvial geomorphology is how water does it. When you put a dam on, moving water wants to hold and transport sediment. When you put a dam online, it has those contrary functions where the dam tends to settle out. Water isn't moving anymore, so the sediment settles out, which is why we've got sediment aggrading in the pond, and the channel itself is aggrading upstream. So it's leaving its natural channel shape and it's collecting sediment. Whereas downstream of the dam, because that sediment has removed, it's sediment starved. So that water wants to get sediment back. It's pulling it from the banks and from the bed, and it's incising and degrading. So aggrading upstream and degrading downstream, both of which are sort of non-natural conditions. In addition to the brook trout, which is one of the keys, there are eight species found downstream, 21 found upstream. There are also some species at risk in the area. Bats and barn swallows, particularly from a species at risk, but of real relevance to the pond is a species of conservation concern. A snapping turtle was observed by UTRCA staff over the last few years. Water quality, as I said, is a cold water fishery. It's a cold water stream. It's great. An online pond has a negative effect on that. It sits like a bathtub on the landscape and warms up. So with just solar radiation, measuring in various years from 2010 through 2016 showed a range of 0 degrees impact to up to 7 degrees impact. Well, the warmth of the water holds, it dictates how much dissolved oxygen it can hold. So the warmer it is, the less oxygen it can hold. The brook trout don't thrive. We're actually suffocating fish if we warm up the water too much. But other water quality parameters are within the range of water of the typical watershed. So it's indicates definitely potential for rehabilitation. From a social cultural, it's a conservation area. It is used frequently by picnickers, hikers. It's not a large, it's in a rural landscape, but it's definitely used. I'm assuming some people like it for the still water feature, and it has been there for 70 or 64 years. So I'm sure people are used to the fact that a dam and a reflecting pond or a pond is there. Archaeologically, it was assessed in the last few years as well. They looked at a 3-hectare sort of study area around the dam itself. The dam, under a permanent body of water, and the steep slopes leading into the dam are considered to have no archaeological significance. There's potential archaeological significance in the 2 external hectares sort of around that. But really none of the work that would be proposed to be done, if the area was protected, it shouldn't affect archaeology, anything we do there, really. So let's walk through some of the alternatives. We did look at 5 different alternatives, and they really fall into 2 primary buckets. One would be a dam remains on the site in some form or another. The other bucket would be we remove the dam and rehabilitate the area to more reflect what would have been there to human. As with any class environmental assessment, the do nothing option is a mandatory option that needs to be considered, even though it seems sort of silly. There are certainly pros and cons to even the do nothing. Obviously, from a capital outlay, it would be the cheapest, but there's all the other negative sort of environmental, and then on long-term operational maintenance financing, you would need to come in and continue to remove sediment as it accrues over time. So that was alternative 1, and that's a mandatory alternative. 2 is basically maintain what's there, but you're ripping out the dam and you're repairing and replacing. So you're basically bringing that dam up to current design standards. You would make the slopes a little more gentle. You would design the spillway to functionally handle that design inflow flood that is required by federal and provincial standards. But you're putting a dam back on the landscape. And number 3 falls into that no dam bucket, and that is basically remove and either allow it to return to a natural channel plan form naturally, or you could go through a natural channel design principles. I mean, we rebuild water courses all the time. It's kind of an engineering, geomorphology, science-based assessment of what it should look like, and then you're bringing a contractor in to physically build it as well. The areas around the reformed watercourse would be naturalized as sort of a riparian floodplain, wetland type, or sort of other vegetated means, but it does open up options for additional trails and signage and that sort of thing. Alternative 4 is basically like alternative 3, but we're maintaining an offline wetland or wet pond associated with it as well. One of the benefits to this being that snapping turtle, that species of conservation concern that we mentioned. They tend to like those standing bodies of water a little bit more. And naturally occurring riparian wetlands are a function on the land, or a naturally occurring aspect of the landscape as well. So not a lot of difference there between 3 and 4, except for the addition of a standing water body just offline. Back into sort of an amalgam of the dam in, dam out bucket, although it clearly still is a dam in. It's a lower dam structure, so it would create a smaller head pond. You would have the upper portion of the water course through the Umbro Conservation Area would be renaturalized. Again, riparian planting, that sort of thing. Some of the negative natural consequences of fish barrier passage and whatnot still exist, but it does create snapping turtle habitat as well. So there's pros and cons with each of these alternatives. So once we've got them all derived and we sort of understand the background to them and what they all look like, we go through an alternative evaluation, and the criteria that we use kind of follows the municipal class and CO class EA direction. They fall into the 4 major buckets of technical, natural environment, social cultural environment, and economic environment. So those are all defined as the environment from an EA Act perspective. And they are exactly sort of what you might expect. And you're comparing alternatives to each other. So one may have an alternative from a constructability. Obviously, they do nothing, there's nothing to do. So it's arguably easier to construct and there's no approvability needed. However, there'd be a negative consequence on the natural environment, whether that's aquatic or terrestrial ecology, the geomorphology that we talked about, or water quality. Social cultural, this is more of a personal thing, and we did have people at the Public Information Center who are tied to a standing body of water. And I understand there's small dams everywhere, reflecting bodies everywhere. This one, in that it's more of a rural landscape, it tends to seem to not be as prevalent in this particular instance. I know we certainly have dams within UTRCA's watershed, and I'm ex-GRCA. We had all kinds of these dams as well, where people just wanted to maintain that standing body of water. So for them, it's definitely a social and cultural, but others do like that natural landscape as well. Financial. Again, we've got the capital outlay and we've got the long-term operational outlay, and really the non-dam options might be a little more expensive up front, but they basically eliminate any long-term operationals. You're not dredging sediment and whatnot. The bigger thing here, a little bit of an asterisk, is the access to external funding. Whatever alternative we end up choosing here, when you want to go get money from external sources, Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited, we'll run through a few of these. The ethos sort of currently is more toward dam removal. So you might have easier access to funding with one of the non-dam options. Public consultation, I mentioned we went through PIC number 4. This was at the end of January. I think it went generally really well. We had representation from both Matrix and UTRCA staff, probably 6, 7, 8 staff there altogether. 21 people came through, which is pretty good for a PIC. Input received from 8 individuals, and 6 expressed an interest in joining the community liaison committee. As I mentioned, we did follow sort of the Conservation Ontario Class EA process for protocol for how to do this engagement. I thought generally well attended and generally well supported. Sneak preview, the outcome of our referral looked alternative. We looked at the alternative evaluation a few different ways. I looked at it completely independently. UTRCA staff looked at various of the parameters that were sort of in their realm of expertise independently. And we did account for input that we received from the public as well. And what bubbled out was alternative 4, so that removal of the dam with an offline channel or with an online channel and an offline pond or wetland bubbled to the top as a preferred. It wasn't significantly an advantage over alternative 3, but really it comes down to probably that turtle habitat that makes the biggest difference. One thing that did get weighed in with the public information or public consultation, those 4 buckets of environmental, terrestrial, technical, natural environment, social, cultural, and financial. We started our evaluation assuming equal weighting across those 4 different divisions of 25% each when we were, starting to put the numbers to this evaluation. One thing we did get out of the public was that they have a more vested interest and they rank higher the natural environment. They actually ranked lower on the social cultural. So we ended up adjusting the weighting on that in the final evaluation as well. And that natural environment ended up being worth 31% of the overall ranking, where the social cultural dropped down to 19 and the technical and economic stayed the same at 25. So even when we looked at it all of those different ways, the same evaluation ranking fell out. So it gave us some confidence that alternative 4 truly is probably the best socially and probably the environmentally and likely the most well accepted by the public as well. So again, I'm not going to belay on this. We've seen this slide. This is sort of what it looks like aerially. I did want to give you some context as to this is not the first rodeo for UTRCA or for others. There's a couple of local examples in the Hodges Pond removal and Cedar Creek restoration within the UTRCA's watershed, where a dam has been removed and returned to a natural channel system. So that kind of gives you a visual of what that looks like. One that's not within the UTRCA, but which is in my sort of peripheral wheelhouse. This is north of Guelph. It's called the Murden Creek Pond removal. I'm from Guelph and a local member of the Trout Unlimited group there. And they spearheaded the removal of this dam. So the dam was down here. The creek flows sort of west to east. This is Highway 6 running between Guelph and Fergus. This is an aerial shot in just before the pond was removed. It was years in the making getting this pond removed, and then the whole project was done in about 3 days. So it was frustrating and stunning, but also rewarding for Trout Unlimited. They removed that dam slowly, and they just let the watercourse do what it wanted to do through the sediment. So it cut itself its own little new meandering pathway through. You have to control the sediment at the downstream end so that you're not pushing it all downstream. But that that sediment that remained in the pond is full of seeds and it's full of nutrients from the upstream agricultural drainage area, and it pops immediately. So this is within about a week of that dam being slowly removed. And within about a year of it being removed, it was fully vegetated and there's a creek running through it. I do have a few Google Street Views, amazing. I took it from Highway 6 here. So this is when a pond was in place in 2009-ish. This was 6 months or so after removal in 2011. And then 2022 is what it looks like today. So that's that existing pond. So that's kind of what, maybe give you a picture of what this could look like. You are charged with reviewing the impacts of those preferred alternatives. We've kind of bounced around this sort of thing from a natural environment, really nothing but good that could come out of this. You're improving fish passage, you're reducing the thermal impact, you're maintaining the sediment. Ideally, we're maintaining the sediment in the pond. That's could be a big cost if we have to remove it. And in fact, if it's contaminated, there was a local sample in 2015 that showed one element of concern, which was actually cyanide that was just over potential or provincial quality objectives for being able to transport it off site and deposit it somewhere. Like, it just makes things a little more complex. Does it have to go to landfill? If you can leave it on site and in situ and the plants come up, it's great. It saves a lot of money. Technical, the one negative that was identified with removal of a pond is that pond could be recharging now and helping support nearby shallow groundwater wells. So by removing the pond, if you're removing that recharge, you could affect those wells. It's mitigatable through deepening the wells, really. But it does eliminate, from the UTRCA's perspective, it eliminates that dam safety hazard, which is a liability. It is considered a low hazard dam, mainly because it's a relatively small structure and that there's nothing of serious consequence downstream in terms of potential loss of property or loss of life. So it's not a high hazard, but it is kind of a liability on the books for the dam owner. In terms of financial, as I said, because we're doing more work up front, it's a larger capital outlay, but it would be reduced short and long-term operational costs. And as we touched on, there are funding sources out there that are going to be more likely aligned with a dam removal option. You don't have a local group of Trout Unlimited here that I know of, but Trout Unlimited Canada is all about getting dams removed and offline on brook trout habitat. So I'm not going to presuppose, but they might be very much interested in either helping out financially or helping out even manage a project to remove a dam. There's all sorts of other funding sources that we could access as well. So that takes me to the end of the formal presentation. Or what are our next steps? We meet with Township Council tomorrow. So those of you on Township Council get to see this again. Lucky you. If all goes well, we finish and we file the EA. We start to dig into, UTRCA starts to dig into obtaining funding, and we proceed through a detailed design and construction. I do have my colleague Marietta Pushkar here, who is our senior fluvial geomorphologist, who can speak to the natural channel stuff far better than I can. And we have UTRCA staff, Sarjeet, and other infrastructure staff. So I'm sure we're available to answer any questions that might be forthcoming.
Well, thank you very much for an absolutely spectacular presentation. Very well presented. If I could, just before questions, Paul, would you like to add anything? As Zora is, you have the most knowledge of Zora. I know you've been involved with it. Do you have any perspective that you could share with the board?
No, I just want to echo the comments you made about how well the public consultation meeting was. And it was great to see us. I think there was about 8 staff there, and they could answer any questions anybody had. And I thought that really went well. No, we'll look forward to, I'll have some questions for you tomorrow, and when you present this to council again, and proceed along the path to take care of the situation, because as you say, it's just filling up with silt, and something has to be done at some point, and it's balancing those 4 parameters that you talked about. From my perspective on council, financial is one of the big ones.
Are there any questions about the presentation from the board?
Through you to staff, and I'm not sure who wants to answer this, but assuming this goes through the process, it's approved, when is detailed design expected? And where is it in our financial plans?
I would suggest Dave.
Through the chair, I can answer that, Sandy. So in our current WEC application for this upcoming 2023 fiscal year, we haven't included any projects for the Embro Dam, not knowing where this project is going to end up, but our plan would be to move with design in 2025 at the earliest. But at the same time too, like, once we navigate this process and once we finish up with the presentation in the board memo, and then the presentation happens with the township tomorrow, once we find out what page everybody's on, then we can start to work with the township on costing and how we would go about this approach about how we would actually implement the preferred alternative if everybody's on board with that. So it's kind of a part and parcel, but excellent question, Sandy. And then we can get into the board memo once anybody has any further questions on the presentation.
Any further questions on the presentation? Dean.
Of the different options, which is best for slowing the flow and, climate change adaptation and mitigation?
It's a flow through dam at the present. So once it's at its static level, in is out. Really, there's nothing stopping that water. Now, there is a marginal amount of what we would call active storage area. So if a rainfall runoff event were to happen, it would have somewhat of a throttling back effect, but it would be rather marginal. The dam is not there at any means of flood control. From a climate change adaptation, I would suggest the natural system is probably the best able to adapt to a changing climate than something that we try to shoehorn in there anthropogenically. I don't know.
If I can add, I think alternatives 3 and 4 are best in that regard because you don't have the impoundment of water. So any temperature increases will not further increase the water temperature differential between upstream and downstream of the pond. You will also have a floodplain that the water can spill onto, so you don't have the risk of a dam failure or insufficient capacity, but instead the water will spill onto the floodplain and slow down and infiltrate into the ground and help to recharge the groundwater that way as well. So those are two ways that those options 3 and 4, removing the dam and reestablishing natural water course, would be better able to handle climate change and adapt. Also by adapting and changing the water course dimensions on its own versus being influenced by prolonged detention in a pond situation as well.
Peter, then Anna.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I think you mentioned that it might have an impact or would have an impact on wells. I guess low wells or shallow wells. Is that all? Are those all residential wells that would have an impact on? Or are they? So what wells are they? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't mind. It has been a little while since I looked at it in the details, but there are a few wells that are situated a little distance away. I don't believe that they are meeting specific residential needs, but we would need to review those as
So
well.
it's a case of re-drilling the well.
Pardon?
It's just re-drilling the well later.
That's right, deepening
Not a
them.
big
Yeah,
deal. Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
I don't mean not a big deal, but it's like
No,
something they could do.
Mitigatable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you very much for the presentation. And I know this has been a long going conversation here at the board with this dam, so it's really good to see it coming to an end. I just want to follow up on Sandy's question around the financial implications, the capital and how we move forward. And it's really good to hear that getting rid of dams is in fashion and there's funding most likely to support that. But who is responsible for that process? Is it the municipality or the CA, or is it combined, or is that still to be determined? I'm sort of just want to know a little bit more of the process.
Okay, so who is responsible for the funding? As I understand it, UTRCA is the owner of the dam, but since the mid-90s, the province cut a lot of the funding for small dams from conservation authorities, and the township of Zora has been financially sort of maintaining and physically, I think, maintaining the conservation area as well. Or there's a volunteer group that I think does some maintenance as well. I would expect that this is a partnership between UTRCA and the township, where they kind of put words into either agency's mouth, they would work together. Where the funds come from would still yet to be determined, obviously.
Dave, would you like to further that?
Yeah, through the chair, if I could just expand on that a little bit, yes. Yes, so thanks for answering that, Scott. I can just provide a little information. So typically, this would be funded by the township. And so what we've done in years past, and one of the reasons why this project has taken so many years is we look to get matching funds from WEC, which is one of the funding sources that Scott included on his presentation. And so it's generally 50% WEC, 50% the township of Zora. Unfortunately, the Embro Dam isn't one of the highest ranking structures, so it's kind of hit and miss whether or not we get funding. So some years the project has received funding and some years it hasn't. So we've typically, well, in the cultural heritage evaluation report, we didn't get funding in the first couple of years that we applied. And then when we did get it 2 years ago, we moved ahead with it to help offset Zora's costs because it's 50% funded. So it's definitely the township's cost, and then with whatever matching funds that we can obtain. And Scott, thanks very much for presenting all those different alternatives, because we're very confident that we could get a substantial help for Zora.
Thank you very much for that clarification, and just reviewing some of the public comments. It's really clear that the public is very supportive of the alternative number 4. So thank you.
Mark, you still?
Yeah, I guess my question's related to what Ann had to say is, when it's all said and done, who makes the final decision as to whether or not it's alternative 4, or who makes the final decision? Is it going to be Zora Township with assistance, of course, from consultants, or the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority to sort of say, well, here's what nature needs or requires in this spot? Who makes the final decision?
Yeah. Well,
It's really a joint decision, like as far as, and this is one of the reasons for the EA process is to get everyone behind what the preferred alternative is. So one of the things that was left off the original EA was there wasn't a community liaison committee set up. So Authority, along with Matrix, have set up that committee to gather public input. So together, once we hopefully move ahead with the preferred alternative, we can enter into a consultant agreement for the design. Well, that'll be with assistance from the public liaison committee. I think to help them decide what the design is. So they'll work in partnership with us and the consultant to move the design forward for what's best for everyone.
Yeah, I think our role today is just from a board level, what do we prefer? Zora would provide what they prefer, and then hope we can come to some consensus and move forward. That's the whole goal, is to try to everybody be on the same page with the information. Are there any further questions? Yes.
Through the chair, that shallow wells are affected and a new well has to be drilled. Who foots the cost for those new wells?
Anybody that can answer that, or we can?
What's the cost to drill a well these days?
30 grand for new.
Is that something that we could always bring, have staff bring?
That is exactly right. We would address that at the time type thing, like whether or not it could be included in the design as part of the Embro Dam, or whether we would treat it differently. We kind of decide that at a later date.
With the addition of the turtle pond, how does that make it more attractive for funding? And no Ducks Unlimited likes those little water features.
It may become more appealing to funding opportunities. I think the addition of the pond is also appealing from a natural environment perspective in terms of increasing biodiversity. There could be new species that could be included. So there could be lots of planting opportunities for folks in the natural heritage fields. I think you can also have volunteer planting opportunities, and there are lots of opportunities for funding as well as for funding in-kind contributions through volunteer action as well. So.
Yeah, so the chair, I can add to that. I've had some conversation with Ducks Unlimited, and they said that if we include offline ponds and wetlands, there is a possibility we can get funding through them. but that will be after the design stage. We can't access that during the design stage. That would be through Becky most likely.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion that the UTRCA Board of Directors endorses the Embro Dam EA study report and its recommendations and recommend final posting of the class environmental assessment. Is there a mover for that? Peter and Tom, seconder. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. We will now move on to section 9, which is report for information. There's no decision that needs to be made. So section 9.1 is the administrative and enforcement section 28 annual report. The board does receive monthly ones, but this is the annual one. And I'll turn that over to Tracy for introduction, please.
Thank you through the chair. As mentioned, the annual report and this initiative was started several years ago with Conservation Ontario for those high growth CAs and our commitment to streamlining initiatives. So certainly Conservation Ontario collects this information and produces a broader report annually as well. Also wanted to highlight that this and timelines are just one area of focus. And it comes back to our overall goals is to protect people and property from natural hazards related to flooding and erosion. So certainly the broader goal on this and achieving so in a timely manner is secondary. So with that, I'll pass any questions over to Jenna.
Excellent. So just for the board's information, again, this is the annual report. Usually you'll see a lot of all the permits and stuff like that. There's usually questions to those. I would encourage any board member, if they have those questions, to reach out for staff for clarification prior to the meeting if possible. That way they can make sure they have answers for you. I just wanted to make one note on here before we go to question. Actually, I'll leave that for discussion. I will ask if there's any questions. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Curious if staff have kind of forecasted what's going to happen with the number of applications based on the changes brought forward by Bill 23. Are we going? Do you see fewer happening? Again, it's growth related, obviously, but assuming that stays stable, are the changes in Bill 23 going to have an impact on the number?
Through you, Chair, to Sandy. I don't think so. Our role in permitting really isn't changing. We are still expecting a new Section 28 regulation, which is going to change some aspects of how we regulate properties, but there's nothing too significant. There's items that have been identified for clearance as not requiring a permit, but we already typically a lot of those things that were on that list, we already provide clearance for, so we don't require permits for those types of activities anyways. There is the possibility of the permit exemptions where an application has gone through a planning process. But again, the details on that were very vague, so it was only in select municipalities. And whether that would apply to all planning applications is still very unclear. So I don't know how many municipalities that could potentially impact. So there's still kind of a lot of unknowns, but generally our hazard role isn't changing and we are seeing a lot more development pressure. So as you've seen in the report, our permit numbers were up 33% over 2021. We issued 204 permits versus 153 in 2021. So a significant increase. We are seeing higher workloads. And I don't expect that to slow down or change given the provincial mandate to build all these new homes.
So just to follow up, Mr. Chair, so when I look at page 3 of the memo, there's a number of factors, 2 of which are really outside of our control. I mean, we don't know if proponents are bringing forward complex applications, nor do we know if they're going to bring forward applications with incomplete information. But you mentioned a high volume of compliance and enforcement issues, pulling staff away and challenges with staff's ability to keep up with the workload. Are you confident you're staffed up now to be able to minimize those impacts? going forward?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Chair, to you, Sandy. I definitely think we are in a much better position moving forward through 2023. So we added an additional 2 staff to our regulations complement it through 2022. And now that we have those staff trained, we do have a good group of staff now to address those workload issues. And as you can see in our timelines, we did improve on both timelines, both the Conservation Ontario recommended timelines as well as the provincial timelines. So we saw increases in terms of meeting both of those timelines through 2022 over 2023, and I expect we'll continue to see improvement through 2023.
The last piece, Mr. Chair, and maybe through you to Tracy on this one, is City of London's going through its 4-year budget cycle. And are we in discussions with them about the need for funding of staff to be able to speed along the applications that are anticipated, because London is driving most of your applications and is a high growth area according to the province. So are we talking to the City of London about ensuring that there's enough levy to pay for increased staff if necessary to meet the anticipated workload?
Yes, I can answer that through the Chair to Sandy. Certainly on a number of fronts, we're discussing with the City of London. We've been very involved in their strategic planning exercises, and there are strategies about having more homes in their strategies and looking at streamlining initiatives. And part of those streamlining initiatives, it's through Jenna's team that have been working with city staff to develop a memorandum of understanding so that everyone understands roles, responsibilities, and expectations on timelines. So that has been ongoing. And through the strategic plan exercise as well, there was order of magnitude costing included to look at for delivering on the strategic objectives. Would there be some additional costs, and some of those costs for staffing complements to meet those anticipated timelines, and these changes to as a result of Bill 23 were included in that order of magnitude costing. So there's a number of things that we've been working with the city on to recognize this high growth area and the development review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. See, Mr. Wallace left though.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions on the report? Seeing none, is there a mover that we receive for that the Board of Directors receive the report as information? Anna and Tom? Discussion. I'll just note that I'm proud of Conservation Ontario and the internal and in UTRCA. There is two different things here that are highlighted, and one of those is the recognition from Conservation Ontario and staff that permit timelines had to speed up, and they created a time frame to do that, a system to do that way before the provincial government asked us to. And so I think that's important to recognize that we're always trying to continue to improve development applications in the process. We know that time is money. We know people made a decision. So I kudos to staff for that. And making sure that really what we do see in the monthly reports is that most of the 99% of the time, those permits are done on the right time frame. And if they're not, there are extenuating circumstances. So that's very good to see. And I'm glad that we made the changes to make sure that we can keep up with the pressure, to make sure staff are not overworked and that we retain our good staff. And so I'm happy with what you see in the report. Further discussion? None. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will now go down to quarterly progress report number 3. Tracy.
Thank you for the chair. Just to highlight, this is the third report of that are required from the province to look at our programs and services and how we are transitioning to our new best to meet the regulatory requirements. So we do have a transition plan that lays out our process for meeting the requirements and having agreements with our municipalities in place by January 1st, of 2024. Certainly with the passage of Bill 23 and the election before that, we were recognizing that it was going to be a little bit challenging to get out and talk with municipalities that have a lot of other things on their plates right now, dealing with their own challenges with some of the changes that happened with Bill 23. And that's a consistent comment throughout the conservation authorities. Everyone's finding that right now. So instead, we're focusing kind of more internally at looking at what those category 3 agreements could look like and working together with our adjacent CAs in certain regions to have very similar looking agreements in place, knowing that some municipalities have a few CAs, like Middlesex Center has 5. So wanting to make sure that there's some consistency there and continuity, but also recognizing at the same time we all have a little bit different objectives. We have a little bit different landscapes, and our programs and services may vary a little bit depending on those capacities too. So certainly with that, we continue to refine these processes. As mentioned earlier, we are working with our new software, Questica, and this is a very different way of thinking about our programs and services from in the past, parsing out what category things are. Again, as a watershed agency, we tend to look more broadly and look at the integration of all of our programs and services. So to say that it requires a little bit further refinement and a very different way of thinking is what you'll see through these continued progress reports. But
Excellent. Questions of the report?
Thank you. Through you to staff, I noticed that in the breakdown, a number of the category 1 services are not totally municipal levy funded. And that they suggest in the regulation that they are conservation authorities are able to charge 100% municipal levy. So I assume we're not changing anything in 2023. And then I see Christine saying no. But yeah, there are some potential implications for 2024 budget. And the question to staff is, will we as a board be getting a recommendation from staff in how to fund these various programs even before we get the budget? And when might that recommendation come forward? Because this is new for every municipality. We've been able to self-fund a lot of these. It may be an unintended consequence of the provincial government that levy might go up depending on the decisions we make here. So through you to staff, when might that come forward?
and through the chair, that's certainly something that we were planning on having what we're calling a shadow budget to better reflect what our current budget year would look like separated into different categories and services. I'm hopeful by mid-year or June to have something to present to the board so that it's well in advance of having any final budget approvals needed in later in the year, usually October. So you'll see a mid-year change to our current budget in the new categorization of programs and services, and then looking ahead to what that 2024 budget will look like with the new budget in place.
And will you need a direction from this board at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For the new board members, unfortunately, it's been common that we've had to have budget updates to deal with all the different regulation changes and changes in the way we deal, and as staff get more into refining. A lot of these programs were never made to fit into these categories. So it's there's still refining, and that's a good thing. Any further questions? I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report. And Peter, discussion. Again, these will be their quarterly reports, and so as staff again moves through the process of trying to implement the different changes. Again, we just saw some more changes through the regulations coming out, so they'll have to be incorporated, and any further direction that comes from the government, we'll have to incorporate that as well. Again, those conversations with the different municipalities to come to a memorandum of understanding on who wants what and how that's funded will have to take place. And so this is an ongoing process, but I really do want to compliment staff from where we started to where we are now. One, I think that staff has never known more about the operations they've always been experts, but they never know more about the operations and how they're affected in different areas. As we as a board as well, and where we're going. And unfortunately, there's lots of work to do. Hopefully the end is in sight and as we get towards the 2024 budget season. So with that, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That takes us to for your information report. It's a little bit different, and I can ask the chair to maybe explain to me. I'm sorry, I'm the chair. I can ask the general manager.
Other duties as, thank you, Chair. Just to highlight that, yes, this is a little bit different format, and it's been proving very useful already. In the past, the previous board would have seen a PDF of a paper document, but now this new format allows us to provide links to our FY article subscription. I would encourage everyone to subscribe. But then with these video clips and additional information, we can also circulate individual articles out to our various social media platforms. All of those hits and links are then monitored by our marketing and communication specialists to look at where that engagement is happening and to track that environmental engagement. I actually recognize Ray Chow in here today. He's the one that has always said, being a past board member, we need to toot our own horn. We need to get the word out of what we're doing. This is a great mechanism to be able to do that. Our watershed.
Any questions for the report? Frank.
Through the chair, not to add more work with that, but is there any way kind of as a right of way of just adding all of the board emails to it? Or do you know what I mean? Just as like I've been sat on other boards where everyone just gets added to the newsletter when you join a board and then you don't have to think about it. I don't know if that bothers board members, but I just find it for simplicity very easy, and then you have all the information. And we luckily have Sandy emails all of city council a copy of this, but I don't think of myself. I don't think to describe my.
That's certainly something that can be arranged.
Excellent. I did notice as soon as you click on it, it does say subscribe, so it's very easy, I believe. So any further questions? Seeing none, can I have a mover and a second to receive the report, please? Mark? Frank? Yes, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. There are no in-camera reports. Number 11, are there any notices of motion that anybody would like to introduce? Seeing none, I'll ask the vice chair for a motion for a 15-minute break.
So moved.
And a seconder for that. Frank, that's seconded. And so we are now in a 15-minute break, and we will reconvene at 11:30. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's been a while. It's certainly nice to be back in person, and I'm certainly glad to see the room is packed. Congratulations to staff for another wonderful year of the hard work. I know everything's been in turmoil, and hopefully we can wrap that up soon. And we can get on with the great work that the conservation authorities do. For people who don't know me, my name is Brian Petrie. I'm currently the mayor of Ingersoll, and I was just elected chair by the members of the board. I want to extremely thank them for that. It's a huge honor. I can remember sitting at my first meeting in 2016. I came in midterm. Murray Blackie was the chair, and I can have immense respect for that person in that chair and his knowledge and how he ran meetings. Current vice chair, Sandy Levin, was also a chair, Alan Dale as well. So I have some big shoes to fill coming forward. But the one thing that happens, I know, is that staff make it pretty easy. They always have good reports. I know this board's going to be amazing as well. We're going to have good discussion. There's a lot of experience around the table. And so I look forward to tapping into that to make sure that we have the best decisions coming forward for the Conservation Authority. At this time, I would like to go around and have everybody introduce themselves, the new board directors. We'll start with the vice chair, and then we'll continue around.
I'm Sandy Levin. I'm a citizen appointee from the City of London. Nice to see everybody, and a number of people. Nice seeing you again.
Debbie Heffernan, I'm a Ward 1 councillor from Middlesex Centre.
Tom Heeman, Ward 1 Counselor, 10th Center.
Paul Mitchell, I'm a second term as Counselor Zora and second term on the board of the Upper Thames.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna Hopkins, City of London Councillor, and it's just great to be back in person and to be back in this building as well.
McDermott, Deputy Mayor of Perth East, and as every one of these meetings, I tell you, Perth East is the best place to live. Secondly, I've been here, I think the only person that's been here longer than me now would be Sandy. He was here for, I think, a few terms before I was, but I think I've been here since January or February of 2007, so wish everyone the best.
Arch Niger, City of Stratford, Councillor and Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Good morning, Jim Craigmile, Councillor, Town of St. Mary's, also representing First South and South Huron.
Hello, everyone. Dean Trentowski, Deputy Mayor, West Perth, first time board member and entering into my 9th year on West Perth Council. Looking forward to working with everyone.
George Way, Ward 4 Counselor for the Township of Southwest Oxford. I also represent the Township of Norwich. I was on the board from 2011 to 2019, and I was off for 4 years, and it's good to be back.
Mark Shadberg, member of City Council for the City of Woodstock. This is my second term on council, second term here with the Upper Thames.
Good morning, Peter Cuddy. I'm City Councilor, Ward 3, and welcome to Ward 3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Skylar Frank. I'm Ward 11 City Councilor for the City of London, newly elected, and I live in the Cove sub watershed, which I think is the best sub watershed in London. Thank you for being here.
I certainly don't want to miss Scotty's there joining us through Zoom.
Hi, Scotty Zaire, Ward 1, East Sora Tavistock, also representing Blandford Blenheim. Nice to see you all.
Excellent. We also had some other elections besides chair and vice chair. We had our hearings committee and our finance and audit and source water protection committee. So I'd certainly like those who were part of our hearings committee to stand up again and so we can make sure the staff know who they are. We have a good mix of urban and rural and new and experienced members. So I'm looking forward to working with those members as well. And then I'll ask the same thing for the finance and audit committee members. Again, we'll be looking at all the financials and audits to make sure that's all taken care of. And then the source water protection member. Was a hard fought battle. Get someone to run, but we get it. Oh, next, I will give a summary of the budget. It was passed unanimously by the board. I believe there's full support from the board for the work that we do. We realize that we're in a transition year. We have been for a while. And so the work must continue and things will change along the way. I think it's a responsible budget. We certainly want to reward staff for being dedicated, loyal employees with a great amount of knowledge that they can share. So the board did approve a 4% increase for staff above the original 3.5% that was originally contained in the report. As we move through the year, there'll be changes and we'll probably see an update in the budget. Now that we've approved the budget, everybody can go to work and get all that funding coming in. There is a deficit at this point, but we know that staff are very good at finding resources to make sure at the end of the year, those contracts come in, more work can be done and that deficit turns into a surplus. So I want to thank staff for all their hard work with that. If every municipality acted like a conservation authority, this province would be in amazing shape. You're very good at getting funding and making sure that we leverage those dollars from the municipalities to turn them into amazing programs that not only help the watershed, but our residents completely. So thank you for all the work, for all the staff that put into the budget. I know it's not an easy task. This is a very complex organization, but at the end of the day, I think that the board saw that and they saw the work and the explanations. And again, it was passed unanimously, which it hasn't happened in a long time. So I would take that as a sign of good things to come. We will review, I will now review the agenda for the remainder of the AGM. We will, it's exciting, every 5 years we get a report card, so that will happen. And see how we're doing within the watershed. We'll have presentations of the conservation awards, which is exciting. We have a couple of great ones. We'll have some people can't be with us today, so we'll get to continue the fun to a further board meeting, which is always good. And then we'll have outgoing presentations to past members as well. We want to keep them here right to the end. And then we'll have presentations to staff awards, which is always a very exciting. I'm always amazed at the long service records of the Conservation Authority employees. And again, it shows to what a great place it is to work. We even have some people showing up on their own time who have worked before. So yeah, thank you for coming back. So it's that great a place. And then we've delayed the watershed conservation presentation to a further meeting because we do have a lot to do and we want to make sure everybody takes part in that and it's fully participated in. And then, yeah, that will wrap up the evening and then we'll, or the day, and then we'll have some lunch. So we'll get right to work if we can. And Tracy, would you like to present the 2023 report cards?
Through the chair, thank you. I won't be presenting, but certainly we have Kathy Quinlan and Craig Irwin who will be doing a presentation of the report cards. I always like to further emphasize that the report cards are a great tool. They're done every 5 years. It looks at the changes of the watershed conditions over time, and also it summarizes it in such an easy to use way. I always think back to years ago, attending a pre-consultation meeting for a large development project. The Ministry of the Environment were in attendance, and the land use planner at the time, Bill Armstrong, pulled out of his briefcase a copy of the environmental, the report cards, I should say, dog-eared from every sub-watershed that he had a region in. And so it's not just ourselves that are using them in our municipalities, but so many of our stakeholders and really our provincial partners as well. So I think Councillor Heeman had made a comment that, you know, we're responsible for that information, and how we provide that information to our municipalities may change a little bit over time. I see the report cards being a huge tool and being able to provide that information and continue our roles and what we do for the environment and monitoring those changes over time. So with that, I'll pass it off to, I think Craig's going to start off on the report card.
Welcome, everyone. Kathy Quinlan, the terrestrial biologist, and myself, Craig Irwin, the water quality specialist. We're going to walk you through what to expect with our new and exciting 2022 watershed report cards. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the report cards, the way to think of them is we're getting a grade assigned for environmental status. The report cards have been ongoing every 5 years since 2001. And they follow a standard set of guidelines and grading put out through Conservation Ontario. We use our long-term environmental monitoring data to come up with the grades for the report cards. We look at a number of environmental indices. So for surface water, we look at total phosphorus, which is an essential nutrient for both plants and animals in aquatic food webs. We look at E. coli bacteria, which at high levels can indicate some sort of pathogen or contaminants in our waterways. And we look at benthic macroinvertebrates. So think of them as the little bugs that you see scurrying around at the bottom of a stream. They're really great indicators of aquatic ecosystem health because they spend large portions of their life cycle living at the bottom of those streams. For our forest conditions, we utilize the 2015 aerial photography along with some GIS methods to come up with percent forest cover, percent forest interior, and percentage of riparian zone. So these lettered grades are an environmental measure of the effectiveness of programs to protect water quality and forest condition. And I want you to think of the grading system kind of like your elementary school report card, where there's a numerical range assigned to a grade. We'll dive into some of the results. I'll talk better into the microphone. Is that better?
People at the back
Oh, sorry.
want to hear every word.
Right. So over on the right-hand side here, you see a map. So the green sub-watersheds indicate C grades for water quality, and the orange represents Ds. Since the 2017 report cards, we've seen 5 sub-watersheds actually improve their water quality. Majority have stayed steady and 2 have declined. There's definitely a lot of room for improvement, especially with our phosphorus and benthic invertebrate grades. But we're generally seeing over the long term that trends are improving. And that's really good news because in the wake of climate change, what we've been seeing in our data and our environmental monitoring is these extreme storm events actually deliver the most pollution and contaminants into our waterways. However, great stewardship, so things like planting vegetation, implementing best management practices along water courses are really a way to subdue the impacts of these storms and promote higher water quality. Our forest conditions, you can see in the map there on the right, the green indicates our highest or best levels of forest condition in the area. And the dark orange spot up there, up in North Mitchell, is our lowest grade. However, there is some positives. We've had 10 sub-watersheds improve their forest conditions since the 2017 report cards. 13 have remained steady, and 5 have shown a slight decline. A number that I really want you to stick with from this slide is that we only have 11.3% forest cover in our entire watershed. And that's a good indicator of environmental health. And I think this is something that we can strive to continue to improve as time goes on. With the 2015 aerial photography and improvements in GIS methods, we are quite confident in our accuracy to assess the gains and losses of forested area within our watersheds. As I mentioned before, there were 10 sub-watersheds that showed some sort of improvement since the previous report cards. And a lot of that improvement in forest condition can be attributed to forest succession and also trees that were planted in the 70s and 80s finally reaching their full maturation. In total, we had 781 hectares of forest cover gained. But on the other hand, we still had 353 hectares lost. A lot of this is smaller woodlots getting chipped away for either urbanization or land use changes. And even though we're just taking away these little tiny pockets here and there, it really does have a cumulative effect. And that's reflected in the 353 hectares that have been lost. There's also a portion in the report cards about groundwater. And this is really important because there's a lot of people, whether it's municipal well or private well, that rely on groundwater as the primary drinking water source. Here in the Upper Thames, we sample 28 wells at varying depths over multiple aquifers in the watershed. What I really want you to stick with is that almost a quarter of our watershed is located within significant groundwater recharge areas and highly vulnerable aquifers. So what that means is that in order to maintain and achieve high quality drinking water, we really have to take care of these areas. If you look at the map on the right there, each sub-watershed in the report card will have this map and it will point out these important areas to you. So I'm going to pass it over to Kathy now.
Thanks, Craig. So in addition to grading the surface water quality and forest conditions, the report cards also contain a great deal of watershed feature information. So this is where we assimilate data that will help explain why these grades are the way they are in each watershed. So we include information on stressors, watershed characteristics, anything we can get our hands on that helps explain the environmental conditions. So one of the features we include is population growth. So in this last 5-year period, we've had an increase of 54,000 people in the watershed. So that's a stress on the landscape. That's a 10% increase, the most increase we've seen since we've been doing the report cards. Most watersheds are seeing an increase in population, though some of our smaller rural watersheds do see some slight declines. We also include information on dams and barriers per watershed. In total, there's over 600 dams and barriers across the Upper Thames watershed. Each watershed has, Ingersoll Corridor has 48, for example, Fullerton only 9. The barriers include things like perch culverts, beaver dams, stormwater ponds, as well as the conventional dams and weirs. We also include information on wetland cover. Overall, there's 5.2% wetland cover in the watershed, which would equate to a D grade. But we do have watersheds that have very high wetland cover, such as Kamoka and Dorchester, with over 10% wetland cover. Other watershed features, we include information on fish species. Overall, there's 80 fish species in the Upper Thames watershed, and we see a good diversity on all our sub-watersheds. The watersheds at the bottom end of the of the Upper Thames, the Forks and Riverbend, for example, each have over 50 species recorded there. Freshwater mussels, also, we have a very diverse population here, 30 species in the watershed. Unfortunately, 9 are species at risk, which shows the stress this animal group is facing. We include a lot of information about the type of watercourses in each watershed. So there's almost 6,000 kilometers of watercourse in the watershed, everything from river to drains to ditches. And only 30% is in a natural state. 39% has been channelized or straightened, and 31% is buried. Other things we report on stressors, for example, spills. We get this data from the province, and 472 spills were reported across the watershed between 2016 and 2020, up from the previous time period. And the map on the right shows the distribution of these spills. For the most part, they're concentrated in urban areas such as London, which is not a big surprise. Most of about half of the material type that is spilled comes from industrial chemicals. And you'll see the different types of pollutants there as well. We also include a section on Great Lakes connections. So obviously everything that happens in this watershed flows downstream to the lower Thames, as well as to Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie, and has an impact there. We include a section on our shared waters approach, which is an updated Thames River watershed management plan that has been developed over the last several years with participation from our First Nations, federal, provincial governments, municipalities, and both conservation authorities. And happy to say implementation of this watershed management plan is underway. Another section of the report cards, hard to believe we have all these sections and it's only 8 pages, but we have a section on local actions for improvement, where we list a number of actions that municipalities, landowners, individuals can do to improve the environment. So we provide these actions, we look at what the best management practices are out there and make recommendations to increase those. For example, the use of low impact development techniques such as rain gardens, establishing cover crops to reduce soil erosion, and continuing to plant trees along watercourses to connect riverine woodlands. And the last page of the report card is our highlights of progress since the last report cards, 2017. And here we give a lot of examples of what the Upper Thames and its many partners have accomplished in the last 5 years to improve the watershed health conditions. So we include examples of where prairie or trees have been planted. A nice new thing is that the tree power program has really grown. London started the program, and now St. Mary's, Stratford, and Perth South all have tree power programs to provide native hardwood trees to their residents. We also include a lot of highlights of sewer and infrastructure projects. So wastewater treatment plant updates, especially in our urban municipalities, and all the separation of stormwater and sanitary sewer pipes that's ongoing really make a difference for our water quality. And we also provide numbers of our tree planting programs. Our tree planting program is very popular and been ongoing for many years. And in this 5-year period, we've planted 235,000 trees at 500 different sites across the watershed. And a lot of thousands of students and community members have taken part in some of these tree planting projects as well. And the map on the right shows the darker colors are the watersheds that had the highest uptake in tree planting programs this last 5 years. So ultimately, the report cards are a tool to turn information into action. We want to increase the local awareness of what the conditions are like in each watershed, so that people have an understanding of the health of their watershed and what they can do about it. We want to promote our programs and best management practices so that people know what the steps are to improve the situation. In fact, we've got 2 landowner workshops coming up next month that will help educate people on programs that we have to offer and help we can provide. And finally, for the Upper Thames, the watershed report cards are a way of tracking our environmental targets. Back in 2016, we developed environmental targets as part of our strategic plan. And two of the goals are to improve each sub-watershed's water quality score by 1 grade by 2037, and to establish and restore 1,500 hectares of natural vegetation, windbreaks, and buffers by the same time. So these report cards help us monitor how we're doing on those targets. And as Tracy was saying, the report cards are used by a lot of different people and agencies for a lot of different uses. Municipalities and agencies use them quite a bit, researchers, the public, other partners. So the report cards are now, as of this week, on our website. So you can go and look for your watershed and print off copies if you like. For the board members, we do have print copies for you to take away if you choose. But new this year is a dashboard on our website that Craig and some others have developed. So it's more of an interactive way to explore the report cards and your watershed. They'll be at his desk later if you want to have a demo on how to navigate this dashboard. So that's a wrap for us. And I just want to put a thank you to all the staff who helped make these report cards possible. It's a team effort for sure. A lot of staff who have retired are here today, and they've had their input, especially Karen Maskant, our former water quality specialist who didn't quite make it to the end to see this produced, but she retired last year. So thanks to everybody who's put lots of time and energy into our report cards, and we'll be doing the roadshow in the next couple of months, promoting these to our local partners and agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Encourage everyone to take the time, not only find your watershed, but everybody else as well. If you do have a paper copy, you know what you're going to be reading before bed for a while. So if not, if you're an online person, that's a great way. The dashboard, I'm looking to seeing that as well. So every 5 years, it's always exciting a time to see what the hard work has paid off and where we can do more. So please take the time to take all that valuable information staff has put together. We'll now move to presentation of conservation awards. It's always great to recognize our partners for the great work they do as well. And so I'll turn that over to Tracy to lead us through that process.
Thank you to the chair. Yes, we're very fortunate to be able to be in person and present some of these awards. And we've had a little bit of a hiatus and only presented one award over the last few years. So it's nice to be able to gather again and really recognize the contributions our in this case, residents have made. We actually have 2 outstanding residents awards. And that award is presented to a watershed resident who embodies the spirit of conservation and through their actions and accomplishments creates a more livable and resilient watershed. We're fortunate to have 2 individuals that we're recognizing today, and I invite Brad and Craig to come up and introduce.
Craig, do you want to come up now? Get up here. I think it's our absolute pleasure to be engaged in this today, to present these 2 awards to these outstanding residents of our watershed. This award really showcases individuals that through their work as well as through their private life demonstrate good conservation efforts and involved with many different things throughout the community and the watershed. The first one we're going to present is to Frank McKay. Frank, we've known for many years. Craig and I, of course, have been around for a long time, but over 40 years. And Frank and his wife, Betty McKay, live in just outside the village of Hickson in East Sora Tavistock. And again, they've been very active in the community. They are very busy people. Very challenging often to have Frank engaged in a project, but when you do get him to a project, he gets in with both feet. He offers fantastic insight and effort, and many projects that we do are kind of wild and wonderful and innovative. I think sometimes we challenge him and scare the death out of him. Unfortunately, Betty's going to see some pictures today that maybe she's wondering what Frank does on the job. But at the end of the day, they turn out to be super projects that really do help move the yardsticks in the watershed, that help teach us things and things that we take across the province, in fact, to teach and showcase to other folks. So we do have videos. I want to, before I start, just mention thanks to Amy, who put together the videos today. Did a fantastic job. And certainly with the first two videos with I want to thank Tatiana, who is the voiceover and did a superb job with that. So thanks to Tatiana and Amy. And with that, we'll watch the first video.
Frank started working with the Upper Thames in the 80s on a project in Reynolds Creek and has continued to work with the Upper Thames on countless projects over the years. Structural erosion control is one of Frank's specialties. He's installed numerous erosion control structures in the watershed, which is probably one of the more clear-cut projects that Frank's worked with us on. At both Piddock and at Fanshawe, Frank installed underwater rock and wooden crib shoals that extend 120 feet into the lake. Frank's worked on a number of projects to improve bridges, trails, and roadways. These upgrades allow our park users to more safely access areas of the parks. Examples include the Fanshawe Lake Trail, the Piddock South Shore Trail, and Wildwood Trails and Roadway, including a barrier-free trail. Frank has also worked on a number of wetland construction projects in the watershed. These projects are both innovative and can be challenging to install. There's a certain art to designing wetlands, and not every contractor can do that well, but Frank has created some beautiful wetland habitats in our watershed. One interesting project Frank has helped with that's a little bit different in terms of naturalizing an authority property near Piddock. Here, community groups were engaged in planting flowers and grasses in pits and mounds that Frank had created. Near Woodstock, Frank helped install Ontario's first farm-scale phosphorus filter and has been involved in other phosphorus removal structure projects. These projects are still of interest to researchers in the water quality world. Every winter, on and off for about the last 15 years, Frank has joined us in the cold in the winter along the shoreline of Lake Victoria in Stratford, placing live timber crib walls, large stone, and other measures to create diverse habitat and a safe shoreline. This is certainly a project that Frank has provided a lot of input on, as things do not always go according to plan. Frank's also helped install many projects that add structure to local streams. Adding stone to create riffles in pools provides valuable places for aquatic species. These projects help improve the overall aquatic health of the Thames watershed. Speaking of, one less than common request came from us when we asked Frank to remove a dam at the Cade property. Last to mention is the installation of a green infrastructure project in Piddock Park to reduce water quality impacts from stormwater runoff on the reservoir. Congratulations on this award, and thank you for working with us on so many conservation efforts over the years. You've not only improved our watershed health, but you've improved access to our park users to enjoy areas of our watershed.
Well, as you can see, that there's an awful lot there that Frank's been involved with over the years, and I think an important person to recognize is that, as any business, important business out there, is that you have to have the operations, you have to have the management, and we're lucky to have management here. Aside Frank, Betty, Frank's wife Betty is here, and Frank always referred to Betty as management. So she gave him the permission. It was obviously an important part of Frank's career. But Brad and I were actually just talking, I guess, a couple of weeks ago when we were playing around with this, and we said, well, what's Frank's favorite saying? Well, we thought about it, says, well, he's always out there and we're in the hole digging away, and Frank comes over, looks in the hole, kind of shakes his head or something, and then gives his opinion on what we're doing wrong. Then it's always the follow-up line like, well, but don't ask me, I'm just the dumb contractor. And there's sort of a delay, like. Waiting. And Brad and I look at each other and go. And Frank goes back to the machine and we say, okay, Frank, we got an idea. Oh, I thought you might have had that. And we carry on. And I think that's been consistent with all of the innovative projects that we've done over the years, that's been kind of an underlying theme, if you want to call it, that Brad and I maybe come up with some ideas or some weird thoughts and we kind of look at each other, but how are we going to do that? And then Frank comes through in the end and comes up with the way of doing things. And before you know it, it's done. So Frank is anything but the dumb contractor. Frank, if you want to come up, we'll
Well, it's my extreme honor to present this award to you. Thank you very much on behalf of the board and UTRCA for all the work that you've done with us. I invite you to say a few words. And we'll have to get our complimentary picture here. We'll do that after.
This is a tremendous honor. It was a complete surprise on two fronts when I got the letter about this taking place. The first one was the letter itself that this was going to happen. The next one was when I realized how many years I'd been involved in this. When it said 40 plus, I thought, oh, can't be that long. And then management reminded me that we've been more than 50 years. It is possible. But I would really like to thank everyone involved with this and for the great experience over the years of working with the authority and of learning from Brad and Craig that there is a better way to look after the land, because I believe that we have to leave the land and the water in better condition than what we found it as. And that's something that's been lost sight of, I think. But as part of this, I need to say some thank yous, Brad, Craig, and the whole team that we've worked with in the summer, in the winter, whatever. It's been a great experience. I'd like to thank my wife for the guidance all these years and for putting up with some of the crazy ideas I've come up with. When I bought my first backhoe, I can't remember how many people told me, you'll never make a living at this. There's no work out there. And it's turned out extremely well. And lastly, I would like to thank my grandfather. It seems unique, but 100 years ago this year, he bought a used Buckeye traction ditcher, which Ken can relate to, from Texas, had it rail carred up from Texas to Woodstock, unloaded it and drove to Oxford Center, just south of town, to start his first job right down the highway. And even though digging the dirt skipped a generation, he was still there to advise me on sandbox and how to move dirt when I was very young. I only remember him running the old machine once, but it's things like that that I think contribute to a day like this. And I would just like to say thank you very much.
The next outstanding resident award is to Ken McCutcheon. Ken McCutcheon and many people who drive around the watershed probably drive through Thorndale and see a shop there, big yellow shop with McCutcheon Farm Drainage on it. It's been there a long time. I'm not sure how old it is, but it's got to be around that 40 years or so, because we've been engaged in work for that length of time or longer. Ken is a different breed, in a good, very good way. Sorry, clarify that. Ken is the guy that gets in the hole, gets dirty. And I've asked him in the past why he does things the way he does it when he runs his crew, the drainage. And he explained to me that's how he feels he gets things done properly, is to be down in the hole doing the work. And I've always appreciated that, and hence I've always made Berkeley get in the hole. I've appreciated that and therefore learned from that and have always enjoyed getting in the hole and doing work, because I think you learn sometimes the best when you're down in there looking up. So it's been a great learning experience with Ken. He's a great example of how to get things done. Just on a note, Ken is retiring today. He told me, maybe I'm not supposed to share that. In a matter of speaking, maybe he'll explain that to you. But again, Ken's been a great example to the community. He's very, very well known in the local drainage circle, and probably been on more farms than anybody in this room. He is active both locally and in the past, and still with provincial organizations such as the land improvement contractors and the other drainage groups. He's helped with writing publications that we've written, design manuals. He's done it all. And when we run into drainage problems or questions such as controlled drainage issues or demonstration farms, we go out, we visit Ken, sit down in his shop, and he helps us through getting things prepared and getting things organized for the work we do. So he's been a great mentor, a great teacher, and it's my pleasure to introduce the video to showcase Ken and his work for the last 40 years.
Ken's been instrumental in implementing drainage and erosion control projects in the watershed. Beginning in the late 1970s, conservation planning work at Upper Thames, and specifically soil erosion control, was recognized as an important issue in our watershed. Tied to the Great Lakes water quality, the Thames River Implementation Committee provided a vehicle to promote and demonstrate innovative solutions to soil loss from agricultural land. It required both new ways of thinking and support from the farm drainage community. We're lucky to have a lot of really great agricultural drainage contractors in our watershed, and within this group, Ken stands out.
Ken McCutcheon is one of those individuals who is 100% committed to the greater good. Whether you're standing in a field with him talking about tile drainage, you're at a meeting talking about the latest innovation, or some environmental concern, Ken has unbelievable insight, incredible knowledge, and asks super questions. It's an absolute pleasure to work with Ken anytime I see him. He's a great individual. We're lucky to have him in our community.
Upper Thames has had the good fortune to have and maintain a good working relationship with McCutcheon Farm Drainage. From the get-go, Ken demonstrated his willingness to work with us in learning and developing soil erosion control solutions on farms across the watershed. Ken understands water and drainage, but has been actively engaged in understanding water quality issues as he sees it firsthand. Ken respects the impacts, both positive and negative, drainage may have on our environment, and is a strong advocate of research to better understand drainage, a sentiment that holds true with our stewardship staff. He actively promotes and carries out erosion control projects, building berms, installing inlets, and protecting outlets. He is also in the know of innovative drainage projects that are going on more broadly and how things can be done differently in other regions. Ken is the first go-to when looking for advice on innovative drainage projects. For example, when we investigated saturated buffers as a method to lower phosphorus levels in tile drainage, we asked Ken to give us some advice, search out possible demonstration locations, and in the end, he helped us install 2 projects. When we were looking at other ways to help with tile drainage water quality, we came up with the idea of slag filters. We drew up conceptual plans and again got Ken to get his practical thoughts on the projects. Eventually, we got 2 demonstrations in place with his help. These types of projects are still being discussed in the drainage community and how to better utilize them. When Upper Thames began looking at controlled drainage, we went to Ken to get his thoughts on the practicality of its use in our watershed. The first project was fairly straightforward as it was on flat land. Then we decided to test contoured controlled drainage on Upper Thames land, a project that serves a number of beneficial best management practices. Once again, we asked for Ken's assistance in ensuring the project made sense from a drainage perspective, and where Ken's more intimate drainage knowledge was certainly welcomed. Ken's always been open to take on one-off projects. He once referred to our projects as the fun ones, but the installation of the demo farm drainage features may have made him reconsider. Ken has always been a leader in agricultural drainage. He's been very active with the Land Improvement Contractors of Ontario, or LICO, serving as their president, and has reviewed and been known to be called upon by LICO, other conservation authorities, and agencies such as OMAFRA and Ag Canada when they're creating booklets for beneficial management practices and manuals, carrying out field demonstration days, or putting on workshops and conferences, and he's even reluctantly done a couple of videos for Upper Thames. Upper Thames staff have learned a lot from Ken. He's seen as a mentor by peers and other members of the agricultural community. Thank you for your work to improve water quality in our watershed and work with us on innovative drainage projects.
When Brad and I started putting these together a couple weeks ago, I came into the office and I was walking through the parking lot. I hadn't really thought about anything cheeky to say about Ken or whatever. But I ran into another McCutcheon, Matt. He was coming out, and I don't know. Of course, Matt is a carpenter and has worked in the ESAs over the years, and still can't quite figure out the relationship, whether he's brother, cousin, father, whatever. But I said, "Oh yeah, but we're going to be putting this tribute together for Ken." And Matt says, "Well, have you got any good sayings?" And I said, "No, I haven't got any good sayings." He says, "Well," and then he proceeded to tell this story. Apparently, when young Matt was young and was up to no good, and Ken took him under his wing, and he worked for Ken. And so Ken put him in a hole and gave him a shovel, so dig. And he'd come back and check on him now and then, and I guess Matt would be poking away at the ground. And then Ken had finally had enough. Ken's a hard worker, and Matt's just doing what he's doing. "Matt, that's a shovel, not a bleeping spoon." I guess that Matt was saying that phrase was used an awful lot during his tenure with Ken's. So I don't know how long he lasted, but anyway, that turned out to be a phrase that Matt thought would be appropriate. But Ken, if you want to come up, we'd like to present you with this board. Certainly, as the video tribute and Brad.
Again, it's a very big honor to be able to present this board to you for all the hard work that you've done and the teamwork that you've shown with the UTRCA. If you like, please say a few words.
Thank you, Brian. I should just have Frank come up and continue where he left off. Every now and again, something comes out of the woodwork and really catches you off guard, and without having any political background, I'm not prepared for something like this. So it really was quite an honor for me to be acknowledged in this way. And going through some of the things that we just saw there, I kind of wonder, who is that guy? That just don't remember all of that stuff. But for everybody that's in this room, I'm sure you understand your achievements by yourself are never anywhere as close to what they are if you can do them as a team. And I've been fortunate for my career to be able to team up with people such as Brad and Craig, and as recently as Tatiana, to deal with some issues that have bothered me a lot in my career. Like, we get very good when we specialize in something, but we also start to realize all the shortcomings, the shortfalls. And I've developed quite a concern, and Frank did reiterated towards this of being able to leave something in a better condition than what we've accepted it or what we've developed it to be. And that has really been an extreme concern of mine, that we need to do a much better job with our agricultural land than we're doing today. You mentioned retirement, and it's probably due because I get extremely upset when I drive by our streams during heavy runoff and seeing them change from clear water to brown, because it doesn't need to be that way. And we all know we have the ability to do it right. So we're in a situation right now, and like I said, very much appreciate the efforts of Upper Thames, but we still have a long ways to go on educating our prime producers and our caretakers of the land. So I appreciate this honor on behalf of the drainage industry. I really do want to express a very sincere thank you to the Upper Thames Conservation Authority and those employees in it for giving us the tools and the guidance, the mentorship that they have over the past. Thank you very much.
Continue
The
on.
next award is actually the Board of Directors Award. And it's presented under exceptional circumstances to an individual or group that has made a significant contribution to the protection or improvement of the natural environment in the Upper Thames River watershed. So being a Board of Directors Award, I'm inviting Mark Schadenberg to present.
This year from Ducks Unlimited, the honoree will be Phil Holst for the Directors Award, Board of Directors Award. To love nature and to nurture a watershed sometimes results in the necessity to envision a project and then go forward, formulating a game plan, consulting with the UTRCA and other conservation authorities, seeking approvals from counties and municipalities, and often also obtaining funding and grants from many sources, including charitable foundations like Cowan Insurance or the Guns Hill Wind Power Associates. Oxford County Trails, the watershed landowners, the Field Naturalists Association, Stewardship Oxford, local environment advisory committees, and countless volunteers assist along the way in planting trees and promoting the overall improvement of nature and the evolution of the natural settings. Now imagine you have your feet on the ground, or better yet, waist deep in the mud in the marshes, doing inspired work in, in restoration, revival, and overall habitation improvement. And you still find time to focus on being a national board member for your association, which in this case, of course, is Ducks Unlimited. In Oxford County, the Thames River has enjoyed its many friends over the years. Efforts needed to improve water quality, destinations for waterfowl, pollinators, etc. along the way. Here are some of the projects: Woodstock to Beachville trails along the Thames River, Brick Pond wetlands in Woodstock. It's a nature preserve of about 80 acres within city limits. Creating protected wetlands on the south side of the 401, in essence, to filter off highway snowmelt. The decommissioning of the 400-acre Hodges Pond Dam area, which we referred to earlier in this morning's meeting. It's actually in Norwich Township along the historic Old Stage Road. This conservation enthusiast can, well, admire his resume list of wetlands now projects exceeding 20, and some of course in the Grand River watershed as well. He's a fifth generation farmer by trade in the Woodstock area, and his family has many connections, roots to the Thames and also the Grand River watershed. Says Roger Boyd of the Stewardship Oxford Group, I don't know just how he does it, but he has an exceptional ability to bring people together, whether it's engaging other landowners, community groups, or partners, or simply getting his hands dirty. He is a fine example for the rest of us as to just how much a volunteer can actually do. Another one of Roger Boyd's quotes, patient yet dogged persistence. He's a fearless foe of Phragmites, as well as I introduce the Board of Directors Award recipient for this year, Mr. Phil Holst.
First, I want to say congratulations to Phil on this receiving this award. I haven't worked with anybody over my career more deserving of this kind of recognition. Phil has all of the best qualities you look for in environmental partner, project partner, and environmental leader. His passion for his projects is evident. If you've ever been on a site visit with Phil or in a room full of people when he's delivering a presentation about his project, his passion is infectious. It really gets people on board, and he can really paint a picture that tells a story about the project. He also has great determination. We face a lot of roadblocks in our projects, financial roadblocks and regulatory, logistics, bad weather, all those sorts of things, but he always stays focused on the end goal, and he always gets his vision achieved.
Here today at the Brick Pond Wetlands, just to show you off some of the great work done in the city of Woodstock by Phil Holst. And if there's somebody that really deserves a conservation award in Oxford County, it's the great work of Phil Holst. And he's had lots of sponsorship, lots of assistance from the city of Woodstock, the county of Oxford, and so many other groups like the Cowan Foundation, and also something called the Guns Hill Wind Farm, our organization. So between this and Hodges Pond, even a nice trail system between Beachville and Woodstock along the Thames River. So much great work, and that just sort of touches the surface of the work that Phil Holst has done.
I've worked with Phil on and off for about 10 years on numerous projects in Oxford County. We first started working together near Beachville. I was working on trails on the north side of the Thames River, and Phil was working with Stewardship Oxford on wetlands on the south side. And our projects just sort of intersected at some point, and we started working together. And I think our first project was building a wetland on the side of the Oxford Thames River Trail. Since then, our relationship has continued on to projects at Burgess Park in Woodstock and Brick Ponds. And then most notably for the last 8 years at Hodges Pond, where Phil and I have worked together with numerous partners and Phil has sort of led the transformation of that property that is now really becoming one of the natural jewels of Oxford County. The project is amazing, and we couldn't have gotten all that work done without Phil's effort. We started off standing in front of that pond, looking out, thinking maybe it would be a dam removal, and then 1 or 2 wetlands to sort of replace the pond that was lost after the dam was removed. And 8 years into that project, now we have, I think it's 20 plus wetland cells, thousands of trees planted, trails built, wildlife structures, like much more than we ever envisioned at the beginning. And a lot of that is a tribute to Phil's vision and persistence and problem solving and partnership attributes. He's just great at doing that.
It was a few years ago I met Phil during the Springbank Wetlands project, and immediately I was met by a very charismatic individual, and we were able to talk about wildlife and wetlands for long after what we needed to talk about, and we were pretty in sync in terms of how we thought about what needed to be done for wetland protection, wetland creation, and wildlife protections. In 2019, I was chatting with Phil again about the potential for a wetland creation project, and typical of Phil, he was very excited to be a part of this, and through his connections with Ducks Unlimited and Stewardship Oxford, he was able to round up a number of individuals and funding partners to create a close to 1 acre wetland on our property.
I can remember back when I was a kid, back in the 1950s and 60s, that this type of landscape was considered wasteland, whereas today it's, in my view, some of the most valuable land going.
I can't thank him enough for the role he's played in not only the wetland development on my property, but wetland developments and other conservation programs throughout the watershed.
This Board of Directors Award is meant for
project partners who have really left a long-term positive impression on the environment in the areas where they live. And I can say for sure that Phil has had that positive impact on the natural environment of Oxford County. I have seen it in countless projects, and specifically wetlands, but also in tree planting and stream restoration work. Oxford County is better for the work that Phil has done, participated in.
I know Phil, over the years when we've chatted, we've talked about the need and the benefit of wetlands, and obviously Phil knows every reason why that needs to occur, and his enthusiasm and interest in that gets other people excited about wetlands. And when we think about it, the need for wetlands is so large right now.
Sometimes you know a decision is the right one to make, and you know it's going to be a long time involved. But if you didn't make this decision, you didn't get the reward later on of looking back and seeing the end result.
Phil, I know you're receiving this award today. I hope this doesn't in any way mark an end of our time working together. We're working on lots of things currently, and I'm looking forward to all of the things we're going to keep working on in the future.
Phil, congratulations on this award. You've done a lot of great work in the city of Woodstock, and I know you're very much appreciated for all you've done here for us. Thank you. Congrats.
Well, Phil, I just want to congratulate you on getting this award. It is well deserved for the amount of work that you've put in, the people that you've connected, and I think the long-term solutions to some of our biodiversity crisis issues that we're facing right now are solved by the work that you've done in the watershed. Thanks, Phil.
It's my honor to present you with this award. Thank you extremely on behalf of the Upper Thames for all the work that you've done and will continue to. Thank you very much. Please feel free.
Well, yes, I have no intentions of retiring. So Brad Hertner, not to worry. And it was mentioned, I think by Brian earlier, that you folks are really great at fundraising. Well, one of the great things that Brad Hertner and I've been able to partake on are some of the projects that are well funded, also become a lot more involved as time goes on. We find new things to do, and quite frequently I get a call from Brad to say, we got a call from the major funder to say, could you use more money? So I think you've got a great fundraiser here in Brad Hertner, and I wanted to thank the full board for for honoring this work in your watershed. I wanted to thank Tracy Arnett for your conservation leadership in our watershed, along with your predecessor, Ian Wilcox. During the past 20 years of volunteering alongside Stewardship Oxford members, Reforest Oxford, and of course, Ducks Unlimited Canada, I've appreciated the expertise of Upper Thames River Conservation Authority staff, such as sometimes organizing tree and wildlife shrub plantings with John Enright, Jay Ebel, Brenda Gallagher, Rob Davies, Greg Urquhart, and Tatiana Lozier. Also developing the detailed process for permits to complete wetland and stream restorations with designs that are sometimes challenging for you folks to look at and wonder what it is I've come up with, because they get so, I think, creative sometimes. But to be able to have worked with Brent Fashur, Ben Defoe, Carrie Ramsey, and Brad Dryberg, along with staying accountable with all these projects, thanks to Michelle McDonald and Denise Quick. I always enjoy presenting to City of Woodstock Council, to people like Mark Schadenberg and the rest of council for conservation concept projects that we have a chance to partake in. And I must say, much like Upper Thames, you folks aren't afraid to try to do something that's outside of your comfort level, well within the permit guidelines, of course, but willing to really look ahead. And I'd also like to congratulate Frank McKay and Betty and Ken on your awards. And I echo everything they said about taking care of the environment that we live in and the watershed that we enjoy so much here. And and basically working together on really large multi-phase projects, as were mentioned in the video with Brad Glassman, Karen Winfield, Brad Hertner, and also with the idea again of looking at something that's going to take quite a few years and actually sticking with it and having your full support with it. I'd like to leave you with a thought. And that is that sometimes the thought comes up, how relevant is the Conservation Authority? And I think all you really have to do is look at the population of the world charts. And when I looked it up on Google the other day, there's a graph that just keeps rolling of all the people being born at this minute. Probably during the duration of this meeting, there's like 20,000 more people born on the earth, and about 40% of that same number that pass away. But the population is growing, and as the world gets to its full population level, places like Upper Thames Conservation Authority watershed will be some of the most highly prized areas with which to live in, and really do deserve all of this attention that all you folks are, each in your own way, are putting together to upgrade the value of this watershed. Like Kenneth said, I really look forward to the day when you have if you have flooding happening, that the streams are at least running somewhat clear, not brown. And it's truly very possible. I want to thank my wife, Donna Flanagan, and our son, Dr. Devin Holst, for joining me, and all the rest of you for your support over the years and your willingness to keep moving forward in your way of handling conservation here in Ontario. You're an example to all the others. Thank you very much.
Well, that was very exciting. I think those awards do a lot. Not only do they recognize people who have contributed so much to our watershed, they also fill each one of us with hope and will to do the next year's journey and continue down that road. I think you look back, especially with these larger projects, farm drainage, they're not something you see every day. They don't happen overnight. So you sometimes forget they're going on, and you just assume that that's always the way it's been there. So it is important to look back and see the work that's done to make sure we recognize those who have stepped forward, make sure that they've helped us reach our goals. Because again, we can't do it alone. So I do really appreciate everybody for their efforts, and thank you very much for them over the years, working with our staff to make sure their knowledge base grows as well. So with that, we will now move on to our outgoing members' presentations. I can tell you from a personal experience coming in here, not knowing in 2016, again, not knowing anything about conservation authorities. Actually, that's a lie. I grew up in a floodplain in Ingersoll, and unfortunately, UTRCA was a dirty word in my house, mostly because we weren't allowed to do development. But what I quickly learned was there was a reason for that, and it's a good one. And so having the knowledge and sharing that knowledge is very important. And it helps us all understand the importance of why UTRCA and all conservation authorities are there and the value. And I don't think you'll find a bigger supporter of UTRCA today. And I'm glad to tell you my parents are as well. A lot of that information came from past board members and our current board members. New board members, don't take this as anything wrong, but I think the province lost an opportunity by changing that all members, besides Sandy, have to be elected. Some of our outgoing board members have produced some of the biggest inputs to the board, and I know you will as well. But they showed a passion and knowledge level for conservation and work that will be lost for sure and will be felt. And so it's I really want to make sure that you don't go anywhere. We're still there. We want your input and your knowledge. Board members, feel free to reach out to those past board members, try to gain their knowledge. They're more than happy to share They were not mandated here by councils. They were here because they wanted to be here and they have that knowledge to share. So with that, we will now start with Mr. Alan Dale, our past chair. Alan, I certainly want to thank you for mentoring me through the vice chair position. I don't give speeches like Alan. Alan's a very good motivational speaker. I just ramble on. So, but thank you very much. Very heartfelt. Thank you for your time on the board. Not only this, Alan was also the past chair of the Grand River Conservation Authority. So, and a true conservationist on his own land. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. It's like anything you're involved, there's good days and bad days, but it truly has been a pleasure over the last 4 years. It was brief, but it was memorable and very rewarding. Thank you very much.
Tracy says take
Trouble if we don't do it.
Take photos.
Next, we have Mr. Tony Jackson. Tony was on the board when I got here, and I can tell you there's nobody who has more knowledge in conservation and effort put in from a citizen that I've met. We'll be honest, Tony and I have seen different ways, but I think as time goes on, I see it more Tony's way. No, and I think the board Tony was very open and honest with the board and his feelings, and I think that moved our discussions forward and certainly had a different perspective. So you will certainly be missed, sir. And I want to thank you. And I think the citizens of your municipalities you served were well served. And thank you for your time on the board.
Won't say very much because I heard some stomachs growling. I will tell you, I've been here for 16 years and it's because of my passion for the natural resources and the importance to our communities. And for those directors and staff that I've worked with, we've had a lot of fun and I'll miss it. For those that I haven't worked with or that you don't know me, you don't know what you're missing.
Next up is Nancy Manning. So you have a clock already.
I do.
Stir the surprise, but. Nancy, thank you so much. You're on the board. I believe you left the board and then you came back to the board when I was here. Nancy's always been a huge supporter of the board's work, 100% in favor of achieving our goals, and your steady leadership on the board has been amazing. And I want to thank you very much for the time that you've had here. I've always enjoyed the conversations that we've had here.
Brian's right. I did leave and then I came back, so I don't get the clock. Just wanted to thank all the staff and the board members that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 10 years, I believe. It's been great to get to know some of you and had been able to socialize with a few of you even on occasion. So thank you very much and all the best. Thanks.
Then we have Mr. Jim Reppel from London. Oh, he couldn't make it. Okay. So also, yes. So Mr. Jim Reppel could not make it. Jim was represented last year from London. He had a long career in public health, and that certainly came through with very good leadership on the board and bringing good insight to the committee. Unfortunately, being a citizen appointee, he was not able to rejoin the board. That will certainly be missed. Margaret Lupton is also not with us here today. Anybody knows Margaret Lupton? She's one of the most passionate persons in municipal politics. She had a very long career with Zora being their mayor for a very long time. and being a board member throughout her career multiple times, finishing her career with Esource Tavistock. And she certainly brought her passion back to the board when she represented them in this last term. So she will certainly be missed. Alex Westman is a man of the stars, we'll say. His passion is astronomy, and he certainly brought his good nature and his passion and his used to us in a very good way. He's a very for lack of a better term, he's probably one of the nicest men you've ever met in your life. He's passionate about what he does, and he was certainly a very good member of the board who brought a lot of good things and perspective to the board. Joe Salter was our resident Source Water Protection Committee member for many years, and that fits. His career with Stratford and the water wastewater department. Joe was a quiet person, but when he talked, I'm sure everybody listened because he only spoke when necessary, unlike myself. And Joe will certainly be missed on the board. Anne-Marie Murray, again, another person who you listened to when she spoke. She was a soft-spoken person, but she was a very big supporter of the board, and she was certainly a value member. And so she will be missed as well. And last but not least is Marie Bloch. Marie Bloch is probably one of the most interesting people. I won't say women because she people that I've ever met. Those who do not know Marie, she is a very unassuming, smaller lady. But when you listen to her career, she was a train engineer in the United States before she became a lawyer. And now she brought a vast amount of experience and very good opinions to the board, and always fought for what she believed in. And so I have so much respect for Marie. She's not done with conservation authorities though. She was appointed by London as a citizen rep to the lower conservation authority. So she's just downriver. And so they're going to benefit immensely from her experience on the board. So I certainly like to prevent that. So each member was presented in their bag. Of course, if you want to have a surprise, it's going to be ruined. It is a desk clock, a gift certificate. A tree will be planted in the members' grove outside of the the Water Conservation Center. Members who have also served as the role of chair or vice chair will also receive a lifetime pass. So enjoy that. Thank you very much for your service. Again, you will be missed. It's always hard when you leave the board, like most of the members were there when I started. So change is always hard. But I can tell by our first meeting that I'm super impressed by the new members. I'm looking forward to continuing our work. I think everybody shares the same passion. People change, but the passion is the same. And so I look forward to the next 4 years and what can be accomplished. With that, we will now move on to the presentation of staff service awards. And I'm super happy to be able to acknowledge, we are super happy to acknowledge the work that staff do. We are very proud, I think, as a board of the long-serving members. Unfortunately, we're seeing some retire, but the work that you do here is lifelong work, and it shows in the commitment from staff to stay through the thick and thin. And so we have a number of people who are reaching significant milestones. Sasha couldn't be here today, so we'll certainly.
Actually, Sharon's here to help.
Oh, is she? Perfect. Well, if you would like to. Or we'll just.
Yeah, and then that.
Absolutely.
This one will be Linda Smith.
Linda Smith, 15 years.
Ooh.
So much for your service and enjoy, and we hope you're here for nothing.
25 years, Christiana.
And if you'd like to say a few words, absolutely.
Stomach's rumbling, so. Thank you. 25 years.
Our Kelsey, 25 years. Yeah, equivalent 25 years. Congratulations.
35 years for Ellen Avery.
35 years for Ellen. Congratulations.
And the other one. Oh, that's Steve Sauter, and he is not able to be here today.
Okay, well, we will certainly thank Steve at an upcoming meeting. Make sure he gets that for sure. 40 years though. I turned 40 in a couple weeks, so. Imagine, yeah, I can't imagine that. Excellent. Well, I truly want to thank staff. It doesn't matter if you've been here a day or 40 years. You're truly a valued member of the organization. We have the easy job on the board of getting to come in once a month and make some decisions. But we truly know the work that goes into the reports, as well as all the work that staff has to do to carry out the ideas and goals that we have. So I truly want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. You do have a difference in your community. Everything you do does do a difference. And so that's important. And you have a truly valuable cause that we've heard today to work towards. So take that to work with you every day and continue what you do. And we'll try to support you as much as possible to make sure you have the resources available to do that work. With that, we will move to the chair and general manager's concluding remarks. I will pass over to Tracy first.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll keep this short. I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation today. It's so great to see everyone together, but also to recognize our award recipients, past board members, and staff receiving service awards today. I think I'll keep it short, knowing that we still want to have lunch right now, but invite the board members to actually head out into the lunchroom first. We have some sandwiches and veggies there, but that would encourage you to wander down through the atrium, the large glass area. There's some presentation materials set up down there, and certainly want to encourage our members to have some conversations with staff and to meet people.
Excellent. Part of the chair's role is to make sure they have the best discussion and make sure all ideas are out there. I saw that today. We've heard so much from not only our board members, but recipients and staff. There's very few words for me to say. And besides, thank you to everyone here for showing up today and being a part of this great organization. New board members, we have some challenges to face. We're not through the gauntlet yet, but we will work through them each step of the way. And I know past experience going forward, we'll come up with great answers and we'll do the best that we're given with, and we'll make sure that we reach our goals. 2016 strategic plan has very many goals, but it is and they're worthwhile. Unfortunately, that report is getting older. And so we may have to take the opportunity to look at where we are and where we want to go again in the future. Once we get a direction figured out a little bit better. With that, again, I just want to say thank you to everybody in the room. Let's work together. Let's reach the best what we can for the watershed. And let's go have some lunch. With that, I will ask for an adjournment. Moved by Sandy. We are adjourned.